Okay, greetings, brothers and sisters. ABC seems to be copyrighting this video. I've made some adjustments here, but if there are no ads, I'll leave a comment at the top of the video, and maybe people who enjoy the video can donate $1. Like, 100 people donate $1, then I can, make what I need to make on this long video. I'm not sure why they're copyrighting it. They're copyrighting the debate, which was broadcast over all these various networks and is up all over the place. So I'm not sure why they're doing that, but hopefully the small edit that I already did is enough. If not, I'm not gonna monetize the video, and I'm going to hopefully there'll be enough donations to make it worth my while. So here it. Okay, greetings, brothers and sisters. I already did an introduction to this video about my time in the Virgin Islands, and that was done 3-4 days ago. Whatever it was. I'm ahead of the game here 2 days ago. I mean, from the time you're listening to this, it's going to be like 5 days ago. Today's Wednesday, September 11th, historic day. And I covered the debate in my last video. I was a little surprised to find that some of my viewers thought Kamala actually won the debate. And so, in terms of the debate performance, there's a few things that, would indicate a loser or a winner, because Trump was already a known entity and he was restrained for Trump. The battle of the debate is to bring in people who are haven't decided yet, and so these are people who already know Trump, and the things he was talking about, maybe some of those things were off-putting, but we already know that Kamala is unlikable because the Democrats rejected her much from her debate performances in the 2019-2020 primary. And so Kamala was extraordinarily unlikable. And, I know that I'm not the only one who experiences this, because she had a debate performance where they went after her a little bit, and she was being looked at because people were trying to find out who she was. And she was polling at 12% with her being pushed out by the Democratic establishment. And then after the debate, she was polling at 1%, and she never got that back after a couple more debates. They had so many debates, and she was just somebody people disliked. And she hasn't really ever won an election that was contested or any of these other things. And so the other way we know that is the Democratic Party is hiding her away when she has gotten this, she's gotten this position by a non-democratic process. And she was covering for a guy who we all now know, and most of us knew a long time ago, but everybody's catching up and realizing the guy's senile, right? And she's not doing interviews and answering questions about that or anything else. And the media is treating her with complete kid gloves and propping her up, much like they did Joe Biden, who was senile. And so none of those things can be, if she was graded on her likability and what the people who didn't know her now know about her, and her facial expressions and her performance and her inarticulate ways and her nervousness in the beginning, and then saying one thing that she wants to move forward and get rid of the politics of the past, and then making the whole back portion of the debate about how bad Donald Trump sucks and trying to trigger him. It's a complete loss. Any other candidate in her situation would be expected to introduce themselves to the American people. Even though she was vice president and has been sort of a public figure, people don't really know who she is. And they don't know anything more about her other than she's really annoying. She was the kind of person in a Democratic debate that would get me to turn off the debate. Like, she has just something, you don't want to shut it down, you want to turn it off. Like, there's just the energy she exudes, the fake laugh, the cackle, her expressions, her mannerisms, just who she is as a person. I don't know of any of these politicians that's really very likable, but she's like Hillary Clinton level unlikable. And so, that all was on display. So I don't see where anybody would thought she did a good job in terms of, she hasn't become more likable. She didn't do a good job of articulating any of her positions. She didn't, reveal any of her plans other than saying, I'm going to support small businesses, but there's nothing there of any substance, right? It's just her and Donald Trump going back and trading lies and, misinformation and attacks and things that, most of it weren't true or at least partially false. And she did a much worse job than he did because he was restrained. He wasn't, as much of an a-hole like his normal Trump self. He's been getting better at the debates. He wasn't talking in between. He wasn't talking over her, which she did. She was making faces and laughing at him while he was talking, being disrespectful and things like this, right? And so, I mean, and the fact that the media is saying she did great is more of an indication because they're not holding her to any kind of a standard, right? Like she should be answering the things about Joe Biden's his senility and her being complicit in that, and then answering like how she can consider herself a legitimate candidate, and then how she's going to separate herself from Joe Biden, even though she said you're not writing against Joe Biden, which is a line I'll get to in this video I'm not sure whether I'm going to cover it or not yet today, but we'll see how things shake out with it or whatever, depending on the views of the other video, because I don't really want to watch it again if I don't have to. Like if it's getting a lot of views and people are still interested in it, then I'll cover a little bit more of it. But, the main points have been made, right? She, to me, it was a complete failure in bringing in new people and, anybody and again, I don't know what these people's level of evaluation of any of these things I'm talking about, but if they had any kind of a pulse and any kind of critical thinking skills, they would have came away from that and saying she's completely unlikable. And whatever the fake polls say and the media personalities say, it's what they say. And of course, if they're going to rig this thing for her, then at least Donald Trump will be gone. I mean, it's going to be rigged one way or another, and we'll see how it all shakes out. But either way, like it's, there's some good things that'll come of this, and, she'll be torn apart as her presidency unfolds, right? Because, there'll be a time where she's going to be held accountable for all the bad shit that's about to happen, right? And so when that unfolds, like she's going to fail. She's not going to be able to do anything. I mean, she's going to lose any kind of sort of confidence that the American people have in the government. I mean, you'll see how it plays out. Like we'll see how the president election plays out and then what happens afterwards. But in the next couple of years, there's going to be some real shit going down, and she's not going to be up to the task of dealing with it. Anyways, let's get to the other introduction here. One more thing to add about the debate. Whatever Trump's involvement, I mean, certainly he was aware, he didn't get shot in the whole, I mean, I hope he is, like, like that nothing really happened to his ear or whatever it was. The fight thing was completely staged, so there had to have been some preparation for that, right? But whatever his knowledge of what's going on now, whatever they tell him or don't tell him, this debate with Joe Biden was completely rigged against Joe Biden. They didn't give him the proper medication. He was at his very worst. Like this was Joe Biden without any sort of support from his team of people. I mean, as far as we saw, that was the worst we ever saw him. Like he's been better since then, but they were all against him. The news media, the people at CNN, Dana Bash, and Jake Tappers, all those people. It was all rigged against Joe Biden. Just as this debate was rigged against Trump, no matter what happened in debate, they were going to say that, Kamala ate his lunch. That's what they're, the way that she said that Putin would eat his lunch was ridiculous. Like she has no experience with any of these things, right? Like she's a silly little person, like she's got the giggle, she's got whatever she's got going on. She's Kamala Knee Pads Harris. And when you are propped up by artificially, when you haven't really achieved pretty much anything in your life that wasn't earned, I guess dating the 60-year-old man was kind of an earned thing. But in terms of like accomplishments and same thing with Trump, same thing with all these people, in different ways. But that was staged in such a way that everyone in the media knew what they were supposed to say, and they were just going to lie to the American people about what they saw. And maybe the people are so dumbed down. I mean, people suck so bad, their consciousness is so low that they'll look at the pundits and look at these people and tell them what they just saw, right? And, who knows? Like, I don't care. But it was clearly not what they say it was. And anybody think that, all of this stuff isn't rigged. The same thing with this, I saw the video with the townspeople going to their town hall and complain about the Haitian refugees. 20,000 of them supposed to be dumped into this town. 20,000 people is like a concert. You can't dump 20,000 people into a town and those people are homeless, and not to affect that town. I have yet to see a video of these people, these Haitians, the Haitians themselves. Why aren't there videos? And maybe there are. I haven't seen any. But again, anything that's put out there, you have to be you have to scrutinize it just as much when it's something that you might agree with. Like, this is the problem with the Trumpers. This is the problem with the people in the truth community. They want to believe that there's 20,000 immigrants out there because they want to believe that Trump can solve that problem, and this is an indication that their belief system is correct. But you have to look at these people who are in these town halls as possibly being crisis actors, right? There's so much disinformation now in the truth community and so many dopes in the truth community that perpetuate all these things. You can't trust any of it. You have to ask the same questions about everything. And when something shows up right before a debate, you have to question it, right? And so, if people go there and, somebody I knew, or if I ended up being there, which isn't, going to happen, and went to Springfield, Ohio, and you could see these, Haitian people everywhere. I went on vacation. I went to Costco. I was traveling, and this one town, small town it had a Costco, so it wasn't that small, but it was a smaller town, and it had, it had Ukrainians everywhere. We went to Costco, and there was like all these Ukrainians. There was this one moment where there was like a woman with 4 little Ukrainian kids, and one of her kids was wild. It was running around her cart, and she held up her arm and just like freaking clotheslined him. And then I didn't know she was Ukrainian until she started yelling him in Ukrainian. We had a waiter at some restaurant that was Ukrainian, and I looked it up, and there's just like 1,500 Ukrainians there in the middle of some southern small town, right, country town. And I'm like, this is kind of odd. But it was something I saw. I saw these people that seemed to be out of place in this area, and there was a lot of them that were congregating there. And this is, of course, like a year or two ago when the Ukraine war was just happening. I was wondering why all these Ukrainians were there in this town. So these things, I've seen that with my own 2 eyes, right? You can believe me or not, but I know it's true. But everything else, you can't, everything with a deep fake and with, all the things that are out there, you really can't trust anything. And, whatever that story is, may or may not be true. I mean, it's just, it doesn't matter one way or another. Because Trump or Kamala Harris aren't going to save the country. And, we're doomed for other reasons, not just our political problems. But anyways, let's get into the original introduction here. Okay, so I went to look it up. I just want to add one more thing here. It's 8 o'clock at night, and I just went to look it up, and I wanted to see if there's any videos of Haitians. And there's plenty of people talking about Haitians. There's stories there was something from Cincinnati, which I'm not sure how far that is from Springfield, Cincinnati, Ohio, and there was a guy who's Haitian. I think he was Haitian, and he's talking about the Haitian immigrants. He's saying, people are saying all these things about him, eating ducks and trash can things and all these things. He says, no, I don't see any of that. He claims to be Haitian, but it's one guy. Then I find all these other people, there's some news stories about it, but I'm not seeing any Haitians. I see like J.D. Vance talking about it, and I see all these things like that, but I don't see any they don't have cell phones and video cameras in Springfield. They can't show you there's like Haitians cities. I mean, where are these 20,000 people living? There's 58,000 people living in Springfield, Ohio, right? And so that's 1/3 of their population. They went from 60,000 people to 80,000 people all at once, and now they're 20% Haitian immigrants. Their population's doubled has increased by 20%. Right? Like, it's crazy. It's somewhere by Dayton, Ohio. There's an ashram there for the Sajmarg meditation. I've been there at least once. I've been there twice. The place that I went to was a suburb. There's near a mall, and the people there were rich. The people who are practicing the system were middle class, upper middle class people, right? Indian people, some of them millionaires with their McMansions, and so I think there's some money in Dayton. I haven't been to the whatever the bad parts are. I haven't really don't have much of a memory of it, and I don't know what kind of place Springfield is. But you just dumped 20,000 people in a city of 60,000. And there's not more videos of those people, like where they go. They can't, there's not any housing for them. They're all living on people's lawns, and where there's some video of this. If women's being threatened. Take some video of this, post it on the internet, create outrage and bring it to City Hall and, all these other things, right? And so, like, show me the Haitians, right? Like, where are the Haitians? I have some connection to Haitians from my time living in Boca Raton, Florida. My mom, she went to these preceptors who do Saj Barg, and the two women are Haitians, lovely women, really sweet women. They were in India when I found out my mom had died, and they were, really, they came up to me. They're really just nice women. And so my experience with Haitian people is, when I went to school there, I went to a college there, and most of the people that worked there were Haitian, and they were nice people. I know there's a lot of refugees in Florida. There's an influx of Haitian people in Florida. But how do they get to Ohio? There's just a lot of unanswered questions here. And it's convenient that this story broke and Trump used it in the debate, and now they're bashing him for saying that these things happen when, they're debunking all these things. It seems just like another, bullshit thing, right? But anyways, let's get to my original introduction here. Okay, greetings, brothers and sisters. Today's Tuesday, September 10th. The debate is tonight. I'm a little bit ahead of schedule on my videos. I've made half a video, and I'm going to, whatever happens today, tonight in the debate, I'll put in my video that'll be up on Wednesday morning. So this video probably won't be up till Friday, I believe. So I want to talk about my story in connection to that area in the pirate area, right? So in the movie The Black Sails. I've talked about past lives quite a bit, and it's kind of an essential understanding, because the idea that you have to accumulate something, or you have to master something, like in every video game, like life, if you look at life as a video game, there are levels to it, and then you beat the big boss, or whatever you do to conquer the final stage or levels, final challenge, and beat the game, right? You graduate from the game, is a good analogy for human life on this planet, right? And for me, the biggest experiential evidence for past life, well, first of all, there's a complete wipe of your memory and your experience when you're born as a baby. You're a blank slate. You have no memories coming in, no indication that you were here before, and nothing. You're a complete blank slate, right? If you're not properly raised, like if you're raised by wolves, you're not going to learn to speak. That's happened. Like a human child gets raised by wolves. Because that's actually, there's the Mowgli character in the Jungle Book, but this like actually happens occasionally, something like that. If you were raised by some sort of animal that took a human baby in, you would grow up like that animal, and you would not have the ability to speak. If you were found by humans by the age of 10, you're lost the ability to speak, right? For example, and you're never going to be. Like you need those primary years of being around people and learning how to be a person. And so much of you becoming a human is socialized, right? There has to be the social environment for you to be educated, for you to be, in a situation where you can expand your consciousness. And for that reason, higher developed souls, there's limited amounts of appropriate places to be born, because oftentimes the educated people are ungodly. People who have money, people who have privilege in the world, do not have good spiritual environments to grow up in. And so you grow up as an educated person, as a person with, a little higher consciousness, but not any connection to God. So having a devotional mother and some sort of devotional energy in your family, where there's presence of God, and not just going to church on Sunday, but having some, connection to God, but also having education and, some level of privileges, and having a proper diet and getting enough protein and things and nutrition. It's not an easy thing. It's not the norm. And so higher developed souls, that they don't have a lot of, higher developed souls who have, some inclination towards spirituality, don't have good places to incarnate into, right? So to pull out from inside of them past experiences from past lives, because as you start to grow up, as you start to become a toddler, that a young person, things that are inside of you will start to emerge if the environment is and the experiences are there to pull them out of you. And that's one of the disadvantages of human life, is that you might have accumulated something positive from a past life, but there might not be the appropriate catalysts and nurturing in the environment to pull those things out, the good things, right? Especially now where the bad things are pulled out, things that habits and addictions. It's easy to pull those things out in this modern day system, but spiritual tendencies not so much, right? Being a spiritual person, having past lives. And so my experience with past lives, it's a very subtle thing, but some of the things that can prove to you that you had past existence are familiarity. Like, you have people in your life who you just meet and you feel like you've known them forever, right? And you'll find a few people like this where you have immediate connection with, and like it's just there. Sometimes it's unfortunate because only one of the two people will feel it, which is not great, which sucks for that one person that feels it because the other one doesn't. But sometimes you have these connections and feelings towards people where there's just something there, right? And also places, which I'm going to cover here. There are places where you go and it just feels right. So I had that with some places in America, because I've lived in various states. And when I was a little kid, I always grew up rooting, like, there's a lot of cowboy and Indian films, and I always rooted for the Indians. Like, it was counterproductive the way that the storyline went. The Indians were like the bad guys, but that's not how I felt. I ended up making some Indian like beadwork and doing things like this that I had a connection to the Native American, whatever it is. And years later, when I first became a preceptor and a person who was doing the Sajmark system, there was all these things that fell into place that were indicating to me that I should move to New Mexico. And I told my mom, and she was like really excited, which I had no idea. And she said that my dad was stationed in California or something for World War II. He wasn't somebody who could fight, but he was he was stationed stateside because he wasn't, whatever his eyesight or whatever reasons, that he couldn't do the war thing. But they were in California for whatever reason. I forget the story. And they were driving back to New Jersey, where they were both originally from. And I kind of don't know exactly the story. It's like kind of hazy, but their car broke down in New Mexico. And my mom was like, I want to stay here. Like, she just loved it there. She felt a strong connection in New Mexico. And she later went back for some, Catholic retreat there. But she loved that area. She came out to, we had a gathering at the Grand Canyon, and she felt a strong connection there. And she was really excited about me moving there. And, I lived there. It wasn't great for, a couple of years. Interesting place. But, I felt some kind of connection there. And then years later, from coming back from India with my family, there was I started a relationship like online with some woman who lived in Vegas, and I had no other connections. I had no support system. And I moved to Vegas and eventually to Utah. And my wife now, who we connected with, came out to Utah, and we explored this place, right? Went to these various places. Some of the pictures you guys see is Bryce Canyon, these Antelope Canyon, and things like that were taken, from those experiences. I lived near all these cool places, a couple hours from Vegas near St. George, Utah. Just a beautiful place. And there's just a connection I have with that area, where I was brought out to that area. And there are times where you will move or travel or go on vacation, and things will happen that big events will happen, life-changing things will happen to you, right? And there are other places where it just doesn't feel like it's home. It just doesn't feel like it's right. And there's some connection to certain places that you have. And, I felt like that. I grew up in Connecticut. And, I felt maybe a little bit more connection to Massachusetts. Maybe I had some past lives there, but I just never liked it. And once I realized I could leave, I moved down to Atlanta in Florida. And, I had a lot of friends and family back there in Connecticut, but I just don't like it there. By choice, I'll never go back. And it's a nice area, beautiful state. America's a beautiful country. And we were a couple hours from the ocean, which is always a big thing. And I've always had a connection with the ocean. I have my sign is Cancer, which is supposed to be the crab is supposed to be a water sign. And I was born in the summer, and I just always end up at the ocean. Like even if I don't really try, I always like going there, and the opportunity always presents itself in one way or another. And I seem to always have some sort of connection with Florida. My grandparents moved down to Boca Raton, Florida, and we went there, once or twice a year. And I just really loved it there. Like whatever, Florida's Florida, and those people who have been there, but I definitely have a connection. I lived there for a couple of years. And I recently went back last year, and there's just something there. There's just a connection, which I saw more than ever in this last trip there, right? There's just, and again, it's not something that I necessarily plan for. It just things happen where I end up there, right? And also, we used to drive down from Connecticut through all these states, and I felt a connection from, in like Virginia, North Carolina, South Carolina. And of course, there's that ashram we had in Georgia, the Saj Marg ashram in Georgia. And these were places that just resonate with me. And there's a time where Master Charji was driving from the airport to the ashram, and he said, "Pull over here." And they pulled the car over, and he's like, "I remember this tree." Like there's some sort of tree there, and he has some like past life memory. But it's past life memories aren't going to be, they're very subtle, right? But I've had all these experiences that have led me to believe that I had been to a place before, I'd known somebody before. And then I've had these various like subtle memories and experiences. And it's helpful because it's a retrieval of information. Because, you've accumulated skills and knowledge and abilities, and having the right things to pull those right conditions to pull those things out of you is essential, especially any sort of spiritual training. So my family and I, when we were going to go to an extended trip in India, we sold our house, and we wanted to go camping, like have the kids experience like living, just camping for like a couple of months in the summer before we left for India in September. September is where it starts to cool down a little bit there in Chennai, India. And so, southern part of India. So we put our stuff in storage, and we stayed at a friend's house in North Carolina, a friend who had like an extra house she had inherited from her parents. She lived in Georgia, but she had this, inherited house. And we rented that house for her for like about a month or two. I don't know what it was. And we started camping, and we went from the like Asheville area, North Carolina, and we went down the coast, and we just stopped at all these campgrounds. We started in the Pisgah Mountains, and we ended up following, these mountains, the water that flows from the mountains down to the ocean. We ended up following this water that, the water flow, unintentionally, but it's kind of a homeschooling thing. And we ended up on the North Carolina coast, and we went to these various towns, and there were some museums there. And this place in the North Carolina where there's the Outer Banks, I believe the town is named Beaufort. And there is these, Outer Bank Islands. And it was a pirating, shipwrecking area. They have these very difficult currents. I wanted to teach my kids how to swim. They had some, they had learned to swim a little bit, but I was, uncomfortable with them not knowing how to swim. And, it was something that I had done my whole life. And, but it's hard to teach kids to swim in the ocean. And we found these bay areas. But we went to some of these Outer Bank Islands, and they had these record amounts of shipwrecks because the the currents and the sandbars and things like this, and the pirates would feast on these shipwrecks, right? Very interesting part of the country, given what I was talking about with the Black Sails movie, right? The TV show, whatever. And, there was this colony that, the English was a small country. Like England was a small country, Spain and, France compared to America. I mean, all of Europe is smaller than America. And these countries have been always warring with each other, which is interesting because they don't do it anymore, right? You have these warlike people. My my one daughter really loves studying the Vikings in homeschooling, and she would narrate these stories with a lot of enthusiasm. I always had a connection to the Vikings. My favorite team was the Minnesota Vikings when I was young. I like Vikings and pirates, and things that I felt connected to. And the Vikings were the biggest kick-ass people. They were bigger and stronger than the rest of the Europeans, and they were just tougher. And they went and conquered all kinds of different places in England, in Europe, and nobody wanted any part of the Vikings. And they were immune to the cold, and they came to America long before Columbus and any of these other white people. But they got their asses kicked by the Native Americans because, not just based in numbers, but the natives that were on the coastline were brutal. They're very warlike people, but they gave diseases to these people that they hadn't had before and decimated the population, so it made it so that the other European countries of France and England could come and start to colonize that area. And I watched this show called The Vikings. I've been watching these sort of historic pieces with was it The Vikings? I don't know, something on Netflix. Very interesting because it was the battle between the Vikings being overtaken by Christianity, losing their Nordic, their shamanistic type of belief systems. These various spiritual beliefs and religious beliefs these peoples had, and Christianity was starting to take over that whole region and dominate the cultures of that area. And I also watched this show Marco Polo, which was similar, was about the Mongols, right? Which is now the Mongol people, Mongolian people are known to be very passive, spiritual type people, but they were brutal. They were some of the worst people in terms of conquering all those areas. Like they had this empire. And the Vikings were these kick-ass people. And, now I know all these people from Denmark. In the Sejmark system, there is the biggest, bunch of people, the biggest country in terms of population of doing Sejmark is the Danish. The second master of the system, Babaji, loved the Danish people. And he visited Denmark, and all these Danish people used to come to see him in Shah Jahanpur. And he made what was called full preceptors, these preceptors that are able to transmit. There was provisional preceptors. And like in all of America, there was 2 full preceptors that came later under Chargy's time. But Babaji made 6 full preceptors in Denmark, which was unheard of. One of them ended up writing a couple of books, and he started using LSD, and he had the spiritual consequences for it. It was a whole kind of interesting thing, right? But these Danish people are the nicest people. Like I know all these Danish people, right? All these, people from Denmark. And they're very sweet, and they're very they're not warlike at all. And this is what happens to people. Like, Europe has sort of outsourced their violence to America. Like America is just a much more violent place than Europe. They've sort of graduated out of those violent phases. They've lost their taste for war and these things that they had for so many hundreds of years, which has now been outsourced to America, and now America's losing its taste for it, right? Like, there was just all this war culture with football and the military, celebration of the military, and you had all these people here, immigrants, hungry immigrants from all over the world that would get their, they would get their footing in America by first being in the military. But you have these places that used to be warlike and used to have a lot of war culture, and people just outgrow it, which is, I guess a positive side. Peoples that were known for war now are known for the opposite. They're, peace-loving people. And you have this, this what's called the New World, a place, this giant country that was full with resources. I mean, just the trees alone had unbelievable value to all these European colonizers, England and France being the 2 biggest. and they would just ship all these goods to to these countries, but these countries who were in wars themselves, they're small little countries. They didn't have as much resources to really occupy both of these places. Like you had America. Think about America in terms of the size of America, as opposed to the size of England and all of Europe and these countries, France. So they couldn't defend from pirates. Like they had all these disgruntled people. The pirates were, actually kind of interesting in terms of their rebelling against the oppressive authoritarian English rule that was dominating the world at that time. You had this small country that, they said that the sun never sets on the British Empire because they had, colonies in India and Africa and Europe and Australia and Americas. I mean, all the way, these places all over the world, Hawaii, all these places. You had all these countries that were, part of this whole, of this empire of a very small country, and they couldn't, they didn't have enough people, enough manpower, enough, military to deal with all these various places. These any kind of rebellion, and you had these pirates that sprang up because they were like, "Fuck this, we don't want to bow to you and your oppressive rule," right? And so I have some sort of connection there. I believe, maybe if I was a pirate, I would assume I was a pirate because I have like a total dislike for the English Empire. Like I just don't like English, the whole English thing. I mean, some of that's my mom grew up Irish Catholic, and there was the conflict between the Irish Catholics in Ireland and the Irish Protestants and all the stuff with England. And, of course, England had conquered Ireland and Scotland, and there's still resentment and stuff there. I don't know what it is. I definitely have some sort of connection to the Native American population that also suffered from this, the hands of the colonialist country. But I just don't, and I watch some English shows. I mean, I don't have a prejudice against the people, but the crown and the old school stuff there, I really dislike. There's nothing worse than royalty as being the epitome of oppression that says your blood, your genetics makes you born to rule, which is clearly not the case, right? Because they're horrible people. I have this thing with Kate Middleton we're going to get to in a bit. But anyways, I have a connection with this whole Caribbean area. And so I started waiting tables in my mid-20s. I lived in Atlanta for a couple of years, and I waited tables at three different restaurants there, starting with the Olive Garden, and then working my way up to Steak and Ale, and then I worked in the revamped Atlanta Underground that had become this, have this cool underground, like it was like some sort of a train station mall area. And for the Olympics, they cleaned it up. It was filled with criminals and homeless people, and it just degenerated into just a mess. But they cleaned it up because they were hosting the Olympics, right? And then it's now reverted back to what it was before. My brother said it's a nightmare down there. But I waited tables in an Italian restaurant there. And, I realized I moved back to Connecticut, and I realized that I was doing a job that was best done in a tourist area because all restaurants are seasonal. And each restaurant has a season when it's doing really well and you make a lot of money, and then when it's not doing well, when their season's over, then you're struggling, right? It's just kind of amazing the way that I'm not a business person, but I could see that it was limited in that way, right? And it was easy to find a job and make a lot of money when the season was there, but when the season wasn't there, it was the opposite. And so I was like, well, the best places to wait tables are like in tropical paradise, someplace where vacationers go. Vacation people going on vacation eat out a lot. They're happier. They spend a lot more money. They tip better. There's just all this stuff. And being able to do a job in a place where everyone likes to live, right? So I started thinking about going to Hawaii. I was like, why not go to Hawaii and wait tables there? I loved the ocean and all these things, coastal areas. And so I was waiting tables at a place called Harbor Park, which is like, it's on the Connecticut River, but it has a very ocean, it's about 45. It's a place you drive by to when you're going to the ocean, right? You're going to the beach. And it's, there's all these boats that dock there, and it's extraordinarily busy during the summer, and you make a lot of money. There's a nice manager there who was, sort of trying to manage all these different cliques and things in the restaurant. It was kind of a weird place. And a place that does really well during the summer when people are taking their boats down the Connecticut River to the ocean, and these other where people are driving to the ocean. And it's horrible in the off season. And so I was making a lot of money, but I knew it was limited. And I was like, I got to get out of there. My roommate was getting into like just he went to Israel to train with the Mossad, and he got this like a Rottweiler. He wanted to have his own security service, and he was just, my brother was commenting on it because he knew it was like kind of going on. He's like, that guy's got a death wish, right? Like he ended up coming home and he had gotten into some kind of fight and fired his gun on the. It was just like, I was like, you're like losing it, right? He's just like kind of losing it. He had been someone I lived with his girlfriend who was going to come into play in this, the rest of the story. And they broke up, and she was really cool, and I liked her. But he had another guy that lived there, was obese, like really obese. And this guy's wife left him because he got so fat he couldn't breathe, so they put a hole in his throat, which he would have to cover when he talked, right? And there was a time I was playing video games, like, I was in my 20s. It was like Super Mario Brothers or something. And I was up late playing video games. And I wanted to, I had to go to the bathroom. I had to pee. And he had gone to the bathroom. And it was in there like 2 hours. So I went outside, like a urinate outside or whatever it was. And I came in, I was playing the video game. And then he walks by me and goes, oh, man, I fell asleep on the toilet again. Because, the guy was just so unhealthy. He's in his 20s, right? Like almost probably around 30. But he was, just a mess. And like when I left, I moved down to Georgia. He had died, and this woman had my roommate's girlfriend had found him. It was just this, just someone who's going down this kind of a bad, disastrous path, right? He was having problems with like the law, and just somebody who was like kind of losing it, and his environment like was indicated that. And I was like, I got to get out of here. I didn't like being in Connecticut after I had left. All the other places I had lived in America or traveled to, I liked better. So I had this, this plan I had enough money saved to where I could fly out to Hawaii and get a job there or something. And I was driving to work and my car breaks down. And it's, probably 45 minutes away from areas where I would know people. And I had this friend whose family is French Canadian, and they had a house down by the shore. His dad was a builder, and dad was he built like high-end houses, and his sons, I knew his brother too. And, they were really like great people, nice Canadian people, right? And they were driving by with their construction vehicles. Like I saw their construction vehicles, and his brother and I made eye contact, and they saw me, and they were pulling over. And just when they were about to pull over, my roommate's ex-girlfriend saw me, and she pulled over, like at the same moment. And so they waved and drove on. They said, I'm all right, I got help. And she was living across the street in an apartment building. I had no idea where she had gone. I was not in contact with her. From the restaurant I worked. Like there was a kind of a high-rise apartment building. And she lived there. And I went over there and, got the car, whatever. She helped me, whatever was going on. And she tells me that she's selling her all her stuff and moving to the Virgin Islands. She had friends, she had a long time like childhood friend who had waited tables there, and he had a girlfriend, and she had a couple friends, and they were all moving to the Virgin Islands, right? He had been there before, and he he's a bartender. And so there was about 14 or 15 people that are all going to move to the Virgin Islands. It ended up being 4. And so and we moved there right after there was a hurricane. I just knew it was meant to be. It was like one of those things that, like, this is supposed to happen, which I've experienced in my life, where there's just these things that, it's easier and easier for me to see, like, this is supposed to happen. This is, whenever you're in a choice point, should I do this or not or whatever. I mean, it was a no-brainer for me because I was already planning it. But it wasn't accidental that my car broke down and then she happened to be driving by just at that time, right? It was a highway, like it was, it was like a 4 or 5 lane highway. And my friends who were in the construction business were like in the fast lane, and they were, it was like they had to come over, they had to get over to the right to come help me, and she just happened to be in the right lane and just saw me, right? And it was, I mean, speeding by, like if people are going, I mean, Connecticut has like a 55 mile an hour speed limit back then, but still, it was, it wasn't accidental. So we get to the Virgin Islands, and there was just had been a hurricane, so they did not really have a season. Like it should have been tourist season there, but it wasn't, and the place is just a mess. We later found out it was like peeling, an onion, and when you get to the center, it's just a corrupt, scary place to be. Like during the hurricane, we started to hear all these stories. The governor of the island was looting. Like the guy who's in charge of the whole island. It's an American territory. There's connected to America. It's like, it's not a state, but there's all these, there's a chain of islands that used to be a land bridge coming down from Hawaii all the way down to South America. Like when there's an ice age and the ocean recedes, there's a land bridge. There's all this, there's a continent there. But now it's just these islands, right? These mountainous islands that stay above the ocean as the levels of the ocean rise. And they have this beautiful water, like pristine blue water. And it's a beautiful place. But the people who live there, there's a census, and the census has 30,000 people live there. And the other 70,000 people are there legally, and there's no immigration. There's just, people are just come there and live there. There's all these islands around there that aren't as touristy. And people come there because there's more money, there's more criminal activity. And so there's all these bad things that happened at the island. So we heard stories as we became people who were living there, people who worked. There are people who had been there for a while, our coworkers and things. There was a girl from America that had been there. And she was probably, come from some suburb or something. And she got busted for smoking pot. And the chief of police said, we'll throw you in prison unless you have sex with me, right? It was like that kind of level of corruption. There's the face of the place. There's these resorts and places that tourists go, and the tourists are kept sort of safe from that. The other thing was like but then there's the sort of the underbelly of the place. And islands themselves, like I would never live on an island. Like it's very incestuous, and it's like a snake eating its own tail. The culture of an island culture, it's just completely secluded, and people like go crazy. It's the other thing that living by the ocean is something where, in any kind of tropical place, and I knew this when I lived in Florida, it's the same day every day. Like it's just these tropical places, and it's beautiful when you're there, and you can drink. I was getting drunk, and I wouldn't have a hangover, and just the ocean's such a healing place. But it's hard to live there. Like it's hard to live in paradise every day. Your mind starts to dissipate. I don't know what the right word is for it, but Master Chargy, the third master of the Sajmark system, said, problems and miseries is what binds a personality together. And that people that have just pleasure all the time, you have these rich people that don't have real problems, and they can buy their way out of anything, and they just go and travel to these places, and people cater to them, and they don't have the same kind of, issues and problems and things that they deal with that other people do. And he said, they go crazy, like their mind becomes diffuse. It just, that the pain and the suffering helps bind your consciousness together and makes you, it makes you like experience real life. And you need to have, issues. You need to have a job. I saw this with my dad when he retired. You see this when people retire and they don't have a purpose. They don't have a work anymore. They don't have, they're just on vacation all the time. Of course, they're falling apart physically, and they're toxic because they're eating an American diet. Their livers are full of toxins. Oftentimes they're on medications. And so all that toxicity, all that, lack of having any sort of structure to their life and any purpose and any goal, and they just fall apart, right? They fall apart physically, they fall apart mentally. And so these places, these vacation places, these tropical places, they're great places to visit, but, having the same day every day, and, have these beautiful, sunny days and just everything that's like island life. Occasionally you get a storm, but you don't like go through a winter. Winters make you appreciate having a season makes you appreciate the other times of the year, and just it's just something to it, right? I've lived in places without four seasons and with four seasons. Also India, and there's a rainy season there, so it's a little bit different. But it just sort of breaks up. Like I'm a summer person, but having perpetual summer and these things, it's not. I mean, it's something you have to adjust to. But anyways, the Virgin Islands was a beautiful place. So I worked at this place called the French Reef, something or other. It was a hotel, like by the. It had a beautiful view of the ocean, but can't remember that much about it. But the business just wasn't there. Like I wasn't making very much money. Just because I had experience, I was able to get a job. The other people I was with, they didn't have. They were just, they were just learning to do this. They had never had much experience. They wanted to be bartenders. My ex roommate's girlfriend, who was, she used to be a nurse, and now she was learning. She went to bartending school. She eventually got a job somewhere. We were renting a car. We were sharing a car with the other people, and then we ended up moving. We rented a place on the mountains. Beautiful house, beautiful view of the ocean from the top of the mountain. But it was hard to get to, and the traffic sometimes in the middle of I got there was a manager of the restaurant who was like upset at me. She was like, "You're an hour and a half late," and I'm like, "Well, there was like a 2-hour traffic jam in the only road in in the middle of the city. I couldn't believe that there was this much traffic. There was one main road that was sort of down by the beach. It was the only road that would get to where I was working, and we were sharing this car, and it was like getting through the traffic was impossible, right? And they had, there was all the insurance companies had pulled out, and the people drove like maniacs there. And the reason was that the people on the island were kind of corrupt, and just all had an angle. And you would have these stop signs that would be going up the mountain. There's a lot of hills, there's these, they have these islands that have a mountain, islands there's sandbank islands, outer bank islands. They're just sandbars that end up having, enough sand to where they generate an ecosystem and trees and things and fresh water. And eventually the sand just gets pushed onto them, and they keep on growing into something that's a landmass. And then you have things that are mountainous, right? And there was a mountain there in, St. Thomas Island. And there's all these stop signs going up the mountain. And people would pull right behind you, would almost be touching you, like as getting close as they could. And most of the cars were standard. And so when you would depress the clutch, the car would roll back slightly before, you gave it gas, and it would get into gear, and you would start going, you would start, you would start up again after stopping at the stop sign. And your car would roll back and just touch the car behind you. And that person would get out holding their neck. And one of the people that lived there for a while told me that you would drive through the island, and half the people were wearing neck braces, and they were all suing the insurance company. Sometimes they were friends that would work together to create some sort of fake accident, and all the insurance companies said this, fuck this, and pulled out because there was just all these settlements going on that were they were just scamming the people, right? So I ended up quitting that job, or whatever happened there, I don't remember, and I went to work at the Stouffer's Grand Beach Resort, which is a very high-end place. And I worked breakfast. And, I worked one dinner shift. I made a lot of money. And the manager loved me because I was, American. And, I had an understanding of the tourists better, right? Most of the people were island people. And they, some of them were better than others, but they weren't, they didn't connect with, they weren't able to communicate as well with the guests. And they had a different sort of work ethic. And so the manager wanted to hire me for dinners, but they wouldn't let me go because, I was the only American working there. And, there's all these island women, most of them were like these big black, like Jamaican speaking island women. And they really liked me, which was good because they were really like rough the way they talked. Like, I mean, I had, a good swearing vocabulary, but they would say things that were like, the only other place that was worse was when I worked in Worcester, Massachusetts, and these were all, these massholes, these white guys that were all like really just the worst people ever, in terms of their vulgarity and, I mean, things that they would say to the waitresses. But these women at the Virgin Islands, they were just brutal, right? The things that they would talk about, like they would say, "Oh, you were embarrassing Paul" or whatever, like because I would, these things that they would say for a woman. I was like, I couldn't believe they were saying stuff, right? But they said it with this sort of island accent, so it seemed better. But once you understood the accent, you understood that they were saying like these unbelievably vulgar and brutal things, and they were there was this culture, and the manager of the breakfast, I worked breakfast and lunch, and they wouldn't let me go to dinners, and I wasn't making very much money, and just there was this sense that we got that like it was just not a safe place. It was a beautiful place. Like there was a beach, so me and this girl got together, and we rented a place. This nurse, and we rented a place that was across the street from. I'd have to walk about, I'd say, a mile to the Stouffer Grand Beach Resort. I went by this place that just seemed like it was almost like gang criminal guys hanging out playing dominoes. Like it just was very seedy. And there's a restaurant named Romano's. And I'm like, Jesus Christ, right? Because my last name is Romano. And I'm like, I went in there. It was a 5-star Italian restaurant. And I had this long talk. The guy was from Connecticut. He knew, we had similar, the Romano guy, and it had the name. He was like, I'll hire you as soon as we have, a place for you. So, and he said this business is just horrible after the hurricane. And, it was a place where I would have made a ton of money and just, it was made for me, right? And I ended up never getting a job there. And I walked by there and I talked to the guy, occasionally. I'd check in and, he just said I can't fire anybody on my staff, and there's just, we're not, my staff isn't getting enough business right now because of the tourist season that never came, right? And so the tourists, when you have a seasonal play business and you don't have a season, and, this happens to people, where you're counting on this one season, the Christmas season for so many retail places, and these, seasons that carry you through the year. And once in a while, you just don't have one. And like that's what was happening here. But there was a beach that I would go to, and it was like a beach that nobody was at. Nobody was there, and it had the most beautiful like water on the island, and this pristine beach. And I'd be there all by myself, right? And somebody told me there's this beach over there that like people go to that live there, and the tourists didn't know about it, and just nobody there. And the water was spectacular. And there's times that I was swimming where the pelicans would be diving in maybe 2 feet away from me. Like I could feel them hit the water, and I could see them go down and be grabbing these fish. Right, you just like it was amazing. The clarity of the water, just like this, like like it was a heavenly spot, right? But all these areas around it, like walking to the beach from where I was, and is just the depressed area where the tourists don't get to see these things, right? And there was this book written by someone who had lived there years and years ago. And I'm not sure they lived on that specific island, but the book described the experience that everybody goes through who would live there. Like the whole island experience. This is where I kind of understood, island life. And just the peeling of the onion. And, some people just can't leave, but they want to. The same thing when I lived in New Mexico. Like New Mexico is a similar place. They call it the land of enchantment. But then the people who live there call it the land of entrapment, right? And it's almost like one of these places like in the Wizard of Oz where you go through the poppy fields and you go to the Emerald City, right? There's some there's just something off about it, right? Like you're just, like it's like you're living in some kind of insane environment. But anyways, like at the end of it, we couldn't wait to leave. Like it's everything was so expensive there, and everything had to be imported, and it was just like I said, it wasn't a safe place. You end up on the wrong side of the law. I mean, the people who go vacation there, that's one thing, but when you start living there, then you're subject to the whole culture and the criminality of the place. And so we limped back to America, me and this girl that I was dating, and she ended up being the person who she went into therapy. She found a counselor. We ended up moving a couple of times, and we rented a house from. She ended up going back to nursing and working for a doctor that was did pharmaceutical testing, and he had a house that he was trying to sell that he, was a bad market. So we ended up living there while the house was on the market. And she found a therapist, a counselor. It's like all this stuff that happened, who would later tell me about Sagemart. So it was like this, this pathway to it. But so I'm familiar with this whole kind of area, this the Caribbean Ocean and the area in Florida and these the coastal states. I have some sort of connection to it. So watching this Black Sails, I felt some a connection to the whole thing, right? Whatever, I was a person there, and I've had this past life things that happen where they're subtle, but I know there's something there for me. Like I was a person involved in this. Like I had a past life there. Anyways, that's just my Virgin Islands story. Let me get into the other stuff here. Okay, so I have some video from Tuesday featuring Tyreek Hill's the cop footage of him getting arrested, as well as Kate Middleton and her, bizarre infomercial thing on her cancer update, and then a few other things. And then I'm going to get back to the debate stuff. But this immigration thing, I just turned on the news for breakfast, and I'll show you the clip I got for that in a second. But this thing in the Haitian immigration thing. So here is a PBS News report from the 9th, so the day before the debate.
Today, the small city of Springfield, Ohio, found itself at the center of a fraught election year issue, immigration. Republican vice presidential candidate J.D. Vance claims that Haitian migrants in Springfield are, quote, draining social services and causing chaos. He's also repeated a baseless rumor, already debunked by city officials, about pets being abducted and eaten, a story amplified by right-wing media and Elon Musk online.
Over the last 4 years, Springfield has seen its small population grow by over 20%, driven almost entirely by immigrants. William Brangham recently went to Springfield to...
So this is a confirmation of 20,000 people, which is the real story. Because why are there 20,000 people being put in a city of 60,000? Like, they just can't handle that. You can't handle 20,000 new people. And I don't know what the time period was for the... And where are they coming from? Why are they there? Who's funding this? There are real questions to be answered here, right? Like, that's the real issue that's being neglected here.
To understand how the city is coping.
The sounds of Haitian Creole carrying across soccer fields, in grocery stores, in restaurants dishing up the popular Haitian street food pate code. It's striking hearing all this in the heartland of the United States, Springfield, Ohio. Springfield's a small blue-collar city with a familiar story. Much of the factory work left decades ago, and the residents followed. A community of more than 80,000 emptied out to less than 60.
So they had 20,000 houses, the housing for 20,000 people, right? Their population had recently been reduced, so the federal government decided to dump 20,000 Haitians into that community, right? Because it's a struggling economy, and they probably have paid off the people who run the city manager and these people, right? And so that's the story. The eating dogs is a distraction, which Trump has. There's a bigger story here. Like, they're dumping these immigrants into communities. And again, it's not cool to do this. And why is it being done? And this is not just, because I experienced it myself, with the story of these Ukrainians that are in a city maybe somewhat similar to that, right? You have places where people are moving out. You have dying cities, where there used to be manufacturing. There's places where I grew up in Connecticut like that. There was a city called New Britain where I went to college, and they had a Stanley tool factory. These manufacturing towns, and Detroit, another big city that has this issue. They were just giving away houses in Detroit because there was, the people were leaving there in droves. There was a whole thing that was some years ago. I don't know what they're doing now, but you have these small cities like this, and if there's all these empty houses, well, they can put immigrants in there, and so, there's a program obviously for this, right? The relocation of groups of people, and that changes the whole demographics of your city, in terms of the school system and these other things, right? And that's the real story. But now because of Trump, I'll show you the clip in a moment here.
That is, until the last few years.
Our churches, we see new people.
In the pews.
Yes, absolutely.
Wes Babian was the pastor at First Baptist Church for almost 20 years.
For years, we've lost people, but you hope somebody else will come and take their place. That hasn't happened here.
Until now.
Because there are folks from Haiti who are coming to church.
Lukens Merzus, who, among his many other jobs, mans the soundboard for Sunday services, is one of those new Haitian members.
Why Springfield?
Of all places. Merzus, with his wife and daughter, were among the first Haitian families to arrive here in 2018.
So that was 2018. And I missed that. I went back because I was, you'll hear the audio I'm doing now for it. But that was 2 years into Trump's term. He still had 2 years left. And so he was one of the first. So a lot of these people were going during Trump's term. Like Trump was responsible for these, the beginning of this process. It happened on his watch.
I got a decent job when I was in Haiti, and then to make a difficult decision to leave, it wasn't easy.
The reason they left is their home country is disintegrating. Protests and violence in the Caribbean nation culminated in the assassination of President Jovenel Moïse in 2021. Since then, the country spiraled. Armed gangs currently control 80% of the capital, Port-au-Prince. Merzus is one of the estimated 731,000 Haitian immigrants now living in the United States.
I got my brothers and sisters.
Okay, so I didn't show you the images there, but they're not great because YouTube might have a problem with these kind of images. They just do, whether it comes from PBS or not, in terms of the monetization of this video or whatever else. But, it's violence and all these things. They showed, why they're describing what's going on there in Haiti. So I want to comment on all this, but first let's go to the, so I went to eat breakfast, and this was what was on MSNBC.
For a better life, but now they're fearing for their safety, scared to walk the streets because they're worried they could be targeted and people could even carry out violence against them because of these baseless claims. Anna?
Amy Schlesinger, really appreciate your reporting. It's important. Thank you. Joining us now, former New York Democratic Congressman and a senior advisor for Vote Vets, Max Rose, and former advisor to Republicans, John Boehner and Adam Kinzinger, Maura Gillespie. Congressman, the Ohio governor has been forced to debunk this story. We have the Haitians who are there in Springfield now feeling increasingly frightened. Your thoughts on just the fallout of that wild line at the debate?
Donald Trump is a sick person, but he's doing this for a reason. He's looking to plant the seeds for what would be a destructive, divisive, and inhumane deportation of millions of people.
They have done to our country by allowing these millions and millions of people to come into our country, and look at what's happening to the towns all over the United States. And a lot of towns don't want to talk. It's not going to be Aurora or Springfield. A lot of towns don't want to talk about it because they're so embarrassed by it. In Springfield, they're eating the dogs, the people that...
It's hilarious him saying this, but it's, basically evil. So Trump and J.D. Vance are pieces of shit, right? Because there's a real immigration problem. I mean, there is obviously a real immigration problem. And there's something else going on here. And I'm going to cover it in this Tyreek Hill thing with these cops that have heavy Spanish accents, right? And so they're bringing in a lot of immigrants, and they're storing them in small cities around the country, failing cities that are depressed, that have lost manufacturing jobs, and have open housing. We know this is a thing now, right? I didn't know it 2 days ago. And that's a real thing. And that's something to be concerned about. It's a governmental policy, and why are they doing this, right? I mean, you're overwhelming communities with immigrants, and what are these immigrants going to be used for? What's the purpose of bringing these people in, right? Is it something that's just a Biden thing, or was it happening under Trump time? Because some of these, Haitians were there earlier, right? We know that one guy in the beginning of this process came in the middle of Trump's term in 2018. And so we don't know, how long it took for all these people to be airlifted or whatever they were into this small city. But we know it's a thing now. And it's been, it's the same thing that QBs always do. This is QB shit. And Trump and J.D. Vance are a couple of QB pieces of shit, right? It's where they say something outrageous and it minimizes the real story. Because the real story is, why are all these immigrant populations being stored in small places, small cities around America? And what's going to happen, right? Are they being militarized? What's the issue there? Like, there's real potential for bad stuff there. Saying they're eating dogs. Now, these people are escaping a bad situation. And like I said, my experience with Haitian people, I went to college in Boca Raton, and there was a number of Haitian workers like I interacted with. There were some Haitian students, and I used to play pickup basketball at various places, another college that was there. And there was Haitians I played basketball with, and they were like great people. There's no issues at all. And like I said, the two women that were there in India, my mom started doing this meditation. My mom was a lifelong Catholic, devout Catholic, and she started to do the meditation. She goes Sunday morning group meditation, and she just raved about these women, how sweet they were, she just loved these women, these Haitian women. There's like a variety of Haitian women who are doing the Sajmarg meditation that I do. And they were there in India, like I said, when my mom died, and they were just wonderful. They came up to me and they offered their condolences. They were just, like really just spiritually saintly women, right? One of the women's name is Marie, right? This, Mary, very just like, they grew up Catholic as well, or whatever it was probably. And now they're doing the Sajmarg meditation. And so to insinuate that people are eating dogs, people love their dogs. Like, dogs are more lovable than people, right? Dogs are just wonderful. And when you start thinking about eating pets, that's really low. And if it's not true, which it doesn't look like it is, there's going to be people complaining about 20,000 immigrants because people don't like being invaded by large groups of foreign people. They just don't. Like, this is always a thing. And there's always going to be, some level of prejudice towards those people. And, I'm sure some of the claims are true. It's not like all those people coming in are perfect. But again, they started coming in under Trump. And, you can find some city hall footage, slamming these people right before a debate, which was done by the Republicans. And Republicans are pushing fear just like the Democrats are. And just like with Kamala Harris, they're going after the dumbest people, right? They're campaigning to the dumbest people, right? And so, it's just wrong to say that they're eating dogs when you don't really know they are. It was just a rumor. And that's, that they've ruined the truth community with this kind of bullshit, right? Because this is being attributed to people on the internet, and the truther stuff and the fucking QBs. It's just like everything that's wrong with, I'm just kind of in a mood today. I'm going to get into Kamala Harris too, because the reason you have Harris is because you have Trump. The reason you have such a lowlife like Harris is because Trump has been here and he's brought the vibrations down, and they're able to push through a Harris and push through all this agenda because there's a Trump. And Trump and the QBs making something sensationalistic like eating pets when there's a bigger problem here. There's these communities of people that are being dumped into smaller towns all across America, foreigners, and we don't know what's going to happen there, immigrants, right? And these people themselves, they shouldn't be like demonized in some way where people are taking it out on them and creating hate. There's people in Springfield, Ohio that maybe haven't had any negative interactions with Haitians, but now all of a sudden they hate them because they believe in Trump and they're Trumpers. They're disgruntled because their town is dead. Their town is dying. It's a struggling economy, and now they have somebody to blame because Trump and the pieces of shit of J.D. Vance and Trump have, perpetrated this lie. These people that, say these things. It's kind of a joke amongst various peoples that they eat dogs, right? Like, there's nothing worse than eating dogs, right? Like, it's just, I guess cats is pretty gross too. But in terms of, people loving their dogs and, they're eating your pets, right? Like, they don't need to do that because they're being propped up financially by the federal government. These people are being given money, which is another thing. Like, they're bringing in these immigrants and they're dumping in all this, resources and money into these immigrant populations. And that's something to be concerned about. Why are, when we're struggling financially and there's a need for population reduction, if anything, right? I mean, they know there needs to be population reduction, and they're bringing all these people, and then they're spending, American taxpayer dollars to prop up these communities. Again, nothing wrong with the Haitian people or any of the Ukrainian people that are coming here. They can be nice, sweet people. But, the government has got to answer for why they're making these decisions. But Trump and J.D. Vance using fear, number one, and promising shit they can't deliver on, there's going to be no mass deportation. They're not going to deport all these people. You can't do that, right? And they're going to drop all these Haitian people back into a war-torn country, which is gang violence and all the things that are going there. I mean, that's inhumane. You can't do that, right? Especially, you'd have to go case by case. Some of these people, it might be valuable people. Like, they could be doctors and, professional training that are fleeing their country, right? And they were brought in here legally. Some of them, through the Trump administration, like, they're not illegal immigrants. They've been, they've passed through immigration and are being, brought to these communities. And so, it's just a dick move. It's, being just a total weak, fear-based piece of shit and appealing to people's lowest tendencies. And, this is why you got Kamala Harris, because Trump's a piece of shit, and they've been using this piece of shit for this kind of stuff. And I come back to this. I want to go through the other things here and get to the Tyreek Hill thing, because there's definitely something going on here in terms of, foreign immigrants becoming part of the police force. And the most important part about this is Trump got baited into him saying, they're eating dogs, because he doesn't know that, right? And this is the problem with the truth community, because it's been infiltrated by the intelligence community and by anybody else. Like, anybody can, any corporation can hire people to post disinformation, and, any agency, anybody. And then there's just dopes who post stuff they know not to be true, or they hear a rumor and they post it. So there's just, the truth community is completely compromised. You can't take anything you hear in the truth community. It's just as bad as the mainstream media, even worse, because there's no control over it. And so, you have to figure out people you can trust, and people who post shit in the truth community. I started doing this a long time ago, where I would fact check everything for my, whatever. Not fact check it the way the mainstream media is, but just see, try to find out where the information's coming from, and, all these other things, right? And not have any sort of personal bias that's involved. Like, just, and do everything with a grain of salt, and make a distinction between what's fact and what's speculation, right? And that's an important part of this. So when Trump says this stuff about eating dogs, it's not going to be verified by anybody. Like, there's just a rumor that people said, right? As a kid, Bubble Yum started to take over Bazooka gum. There's this stuff called Bubble Yum. I don't know if it's still there. And it was soft bubble gum that was kind of better than Bazooka bubble gum, right? Years ago. And there was a rumor that they were using spider eggs in the gum. I mean, this is something kids in school were talking about. And I'm sure Bazooka started that rumor. They had this wonderful, I don't know if it was just a book, but there's also some videos about it. And it was about how the toy company would go and find the cool kids in elementary school and give them these toys, all across America, and how they were even marketing to young babies, like babies in utero. They were they were trying to get pregnant women to eat like chocolate that was, that they hoped that would make it into the, they were actually using subliminal messaging as well to market to babies in utero. Like, they would have these recordings that pregnant women were supposed to listen to and things like this. They're finding these ways of, all these deceptive ways of getting kids to play with these toys and to engage with products, right? The marketing for kids was, just off the charts. And this was like 10, 15 years ago. It's so much worse now because of the internet, right? Now, parents are probably not going to believe there's spider eggs in your bubble gum, but kids would, right? They don't, And that's how the truth community has become. That's how the truth community has been compromised. and Trump and these people are just piece of shits that go along with it. And so he hurts himself because then they fact check it. And, the independent people aren't truthers. And so, like, this is going to hurt him making this claim. Like, he got baited into it, him and J.D. Vance, right? And they don't have any kind of, he doesn't take any personal responsibility. Like, this is the worst kind. People think Trump's a truther. He's the worst kind because it's all about him. It's not about finding the truth. And it's about, saying whatever sensationalistic stuff that's there to help him in his, he's, weaponizing this whole immigration issue in ways that's, more divisive. And, these immigrant people, who many of them aren't criminals and aren't, many of us, all of us have migrated to America. Even the Native Americans were originally from other parts of Asia, right? So there's, we've all migrated in and out. Like, there's no sense of real borders. In terms of animals, like you see animals, they have to just claim their territory and fight for it. And if they get moved out because of a fire or a storm or something bigger comes in, right? There's territorial disputes every day happening in your yard between birds and, insects and all these other things, right? It's just how, nature works. And we all migrated here at one point, right? People come in. And there was hatred towards all these immigrating groups, my ancestors, Italians and, Albanians and Irish people, they came in, were prejudiced against because people, don't like migrants, but they need migrant labor. It's all this thing that happens, right? It's this part of America. And so Trump weaponizing this in a totally deceitful way, just in a self-serving way, not only hurts them and these people, but it hurts him, politically, because, it helps them and hurts them. And, it hurts all of us in the truth community. Like that piece of shit Elon Musk also was putting out these, this disinformation. And, if you see people eating dogs, people can post things about it. Yeah, my dog disappeared. Maybe it's those Haitians, right? But that's not proof. Like, did you see Haitian people eating a frickin' dog, right? These people, the Haitian people, are being propped up by the U.S. government by taxpayer dollars. They're probably on food stamps as well. They have all this money that they're getting. We know that the government is flipping the bill for all these immigrant populations. That's the bigger story, But coming across and saying they eat dogs just screws everybody. It's irresponsible. It's just a total piece of shit move. All right, so let's get into the stuff I had from Tuesday here, the Kate Middleton, Tyreek Hill stuff. The Tyreek Hill stuff feeds into this. Okay, so one of my viewers said that Kamala Harris was actually from Sri Lanka, which would make her Sinhalese, so I searched that, but that doesn't appear to be the case. Here she is in, she's Tamil. This is what Tamil women dress. That's her mom there. That's, I think, I don't know who these people are here, these kids. But that was her grandfather and her grandmother. The one who was supposed to get on a blowhorn and go into villages and lecture them about abortion and birth control. And so they went to peaceful protests where they were attacked by police with hoses, talking about her parents. They marched against the Vietnam War and for civil rights and voting rights. They went together to see Martin Luther King Jr. speak at Berkeley, and my mother had a chance to meet him. But my parents and their friends were more than just protesters. They were big thinkers, pithing, big ideas, organizing their community. Now, these are very traditional people, right? And they do protests in India, but they're not like the kind of intellectual protests they have here, right? The poor people, when they suffer, they protest, and the mob gets they lie to the people and get them worked up. The protests are completely different. But what she's saying is her mom was, an Indian woman who knew pretty much nothing about American politics, right? She wasn't learning that in school. She, the Indian people are very isolated in their belief. Their culture is very different than any other culture in the world. This is the part of the world, this is the part of India that I stayed in for almost 3 years, visited there I think a total of 5 times, right? So I'm familiar with Chennai and the Tamil people. And the master Charji, the third master of the meditation I do, is Tamil. And she's saying that her mom came over to California and immediately became a radical liberal and started to be a part of that group, right? Like, how quick did that happen? Like, completely changed from her culture and all of a sudden cared about things that were not. Of course, she married a guy from Jamaica who was a Marxist, so maybe. But it's not, here it says here, her Tamil roots, the 59-year-old California senator was born in Oakland to 2 immigrant parents. We know this thing, the mother or the father. Donald grew up in Jamaica. In her memoir, Harris writes how she would visit Tamil Nadu almost every year and understand small amounts of Tamil, often using Tamil around the house to express affection or frustration. So she can get a citizenship of India that's called a person of Indian descent. And it's not a joint citizenship, but she can go in and out of the country without a passport, without immigration. Like, she doesn't need to go get it without a visa. And so this is her in a sari, right? And, typical Kamala, right? But look at the difference between Kamala's expression and theirs. And so, it's kind of an interesting thing. And so forage quality is declining, and grasshoppers and livestock aren't happy. And so for the past 25 years, the populations have declined by 2% every year. And so that's quite a bit over a 25-year period. That's 50%, right? Like, after 25 years, it's 50% of the grasshoppers. Now, the reason I know this, my wife found this. We were talking about it. And this current year, there are no grasshoppers. When my wife and I go walking late summer, and when I cut I've built these paths out in the pasture. And when I cut the sides of the path and we walk down the path, like first thing in the morning, there's so many grasshoppers, like the dogs chase them. I mean, there's hundreds of grasshoppers on the path. And when I'm cutting the lawn, they're banging into me. Like, when I cut the area that we walk on, they're hitting me in the chest. And I mean, there's so many of them. There's thousands of them, not hundreds. There's thousands of them. And this year, there's only a few that we've seen. There's none on the path. I mean, there's basically none. And I have no idea why. It's not like any other year. I don't remember any year where there wasn't so many, where there wasn't, abundance of them. And we have a big field that's not being used by cattle, like a pasture. And there should be so many in that field. And there's so many dragonflies this year. We noticed an uptick in dragonflies, but almost no butterflies. We have less butterflies and less grasshoppers. There's a chance, because we live near other farms, that some farmers have sprayed pesticides in the area. Our next door neighbors both have horses, and so they don't spray those kind of pesticides, like bug pesticides. And so they might spray some weed killer for their, to hay their horses. But we have bees. Our bees are doing well. And so, I don't know. I don't know what's happened to the grasshoppers, but it's a concerning thing. You think, well, it's better not to have insects. Well, yeah, but that's what all the birds and other animals eat. And then if there's a food chain issue, and you'd have a rapid depopulation of animals if there are no insects. Like, insects are key. Speaking of insects. Okay, so Kate Middleton, they ended up copywriting me for the music played in this. So I'm going to just narrate this thing here. I don't think they'll do it for the images. But the owner of the song that she uses in this copyrighted my video. And so she's making this, like, PDA, romantic sort of, stuff with William and then the whole family. And she says she's just 9 months from coming from chemotherapy. And she has all of her hair. So, like, her hair is, I mean, she doesn't look sick. And, it's only been a year since she was diagnosed with cancer, and she's just had the chemotherapy. He's just such a goofy looking dude, right? And they're doing all these, this is all staged and set and contrived, and, all these are posed. I mean, they're going out there posing all these things. Look at that post there next to a tree. I mean, who does that? Like, who stands there on their own unless they're posing for something? So that's fake. Like, she's faking stuff here, which we know, right? This is all fake. Like, she probably never pushed her kids on a swing, and guy looks like William. There's that kid's trouble right there. That's the spare. The kid that was acting out in previous videos and things. But, it's good for the kids that they get out, go to the country and do this stuff. I mean, they do have all these castles in the country and things. But, he doesn't look happy. And the whole thing's really weird, and, just things that she's saying. And she's talking about how there's a family of cancer survivors and she's got so much left to do. And the whole thing is just so greasy and weird. And so I put the video up, and it was passed through the copyright, but then the song was, copyrighted. Again, fake smile there. I mean, that little trouble kid, little devil kid there, the spare. And, I mean, there's just, you don't have to do things like this that are so contrived and so, they're just so, it's veneer. It's just false. It's, it's fake family, fake diagnosis or whatever's going on there. I mean, her hair looks great, right? Like, why would she not have lost any hair if she'd had intense chemotherapy and she still has a chance to have cancer? And then all these things that she's doing. I mean, this is all posturing and posing, and, they're just such a superficial, like, their whole royal family and everything that they do. And nothing can be trusted because they lied about it forever. Remember, they came out, they put out all these stories that she was fine, and then they come out and say she has cancer. So they waited a long time to, I mean, they're the royal family, and this is what they're obligated to do because their lives are lived out in front of the media because they get $151 million a year in government tax welfare, the family does. And so they have to perform for the public. They have to serve some sort of purpose. And they live their lives. Here they are on the beach, just, again, contrived. And, I mean, there's a rumor that this guy had an affair. And so this is the part where they copyrighted the music, but I'm redoing the whole thing. Kid gets to climb a tree, right? He's giving his wife a smooch, how much he loves her. And so everything's so just, I mean, it's so icky and just, he's found some sort of tick on his dog, and he tortured his kids with it. And so, there she is touching the grass. And now that was a scene from the movie Gladiator, where he ends up going home to the celestial fields, the golden fields, after his family had died after he gets killed at the end of the movie. Spoiler alert. But that was the same thing. Like, he's walking in the fields, after he died, holding, his hand out and touching it, right? Look at, she's laughing. So he's just so funny. They're just so much fun. Look, they love to run and jump on hay bales. They're so affectionate, and they're doing all this stuff there, and they're showing how much, look, the kids are swimming, they're prancing around. Just a wonderful family, and she's getting better from cancer. It was just so weird and icky, right? What the hell that was. This is Tyreek Hill. And the cops are just completely fucked here. Are just acting like, I mean, it's not cool what they're doing, right? But they're, at most they'll get a suspension, maybe get fired. But there's some things I wanted to point out about this. There's very telling, a few things here. So he says, don't tap on my window like that. Tyreek Hill says that, right? You should have the windows down. It's Florida. You should have the windows down and your hands on the steering wheel because you want to make sure the cops don't think you have a gun. The cops are coming up and worried that you're going to shoot them, right? Like, which has happened a lot. Like, it's not like, it's a real thing. It's not like they're being dicks about it or paranoid. Like, cops get shot. That's how they get shot, when they pull up on criminals who know that they're going to jail, right? Like, so let's say you're somebody with an arrest warrant. You have a warrant out for your arrest, and the cops are coming up to you, and as soon as you hand them your ID, you're going to jail. And prison, maybe it's, for murder or something. So you're already, And so that's what happens. Like there, you have drugs in the car or something, and when the cops interact with you, if you're going to jail, you might shoot them. Like that's just reality. And so you want to make sure they know that you're not going to do that. And so you should have your license and registration handy and all these things. You want to de-escalate the situation, especially if you're a person of color or you're somebody like he has this fancy car or whatever. He has darkened windows. So you want to have the windows down. You want to have your hands on the steering wheel so they can see there's no weapon. And then you say, can I reach for my ID and my insurance card or whatever they want, right? My license and registration. Like you want to, make sure that they are aware that you're, knowing that they're worried about getting shot because you reach down and they think you're going for a gun and you can have a really bad day. Like it's just, it's just what you need to learn to do, especially if you're a targeted demographic, more so than anybody else. Like you just have to, not be adversarial because they could be just a horrible cop. There's like horrible cops out there, criminals. And, they could be having a bad day. You know what's going on with their lives or whatever. So you want to get out of there as soon as possible. And that's the best way to do it, right? But he's being, like a dick about it, which, again, this isn't all his fault. Like, it's mostly the cop's fault. But who cares? Like, it doesn't matter. Like, you're the one who's going to be handcuffed laying on the ground and possibly, dead, right? So, like, you got to do your, just in terms of your own survival. It's just, and that's how you do it. Like window down, hands on the steering wheel. And, be cooperating because you're not on equal footing because we live in a police state. We don't see it, but we do. And once in a while you come in contact with the police and you realize that you're in a police state, right? Like people have brushes with the law and, people of color, it's more so. Poor people, it's more so. But there's instances where like they, that asset forfeiture, which we were talking about in terms of Trump, like my last video or my video 2 videos ago, and eminent domain, if they take your property, like there's times you realize that you're not a free person living in some free country. Like you just don't have action, you don't have interactions with the law, so you don't know. And if you live in a suburb somewhere, whatever it is, it's the cops are different there. But every once in a while, it should remind you that you're not a free person and the cops hold all the power. Because the cops in this instance, let's watch this, a little bit more of this.
What? How you hold up?
This is an overweight cop with a heavy Spanish accent and an attitude, right? And Tyreek Hill puts his window up.
Window down.
Manny, this is Manny.
Hey, keep your window down. Keep your window down. I'm gonna get you out of the car. As a matter of fact, get out of the car. Give me that. Get out of the car. Give me that. We'll break that fucking window. Get out of the car.
Okay, so that's not appropriate, right?
Get out of the car right now. We're not playing this game. Get out. 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 What part of that don't you understand?
Okay, so I think he's talking about his agent Drew. There's an agent, famous Drew Rowhouse or something like that. Rosen something.
Hey Drew, I'm getting arrested, Drew.
I don't know if that's somebody that works in the Dolphins organization. It's assistant coach or something, or it's his agent.
I'm getting arrested. I'm getting arrested, Drew. I'm getting out, bro. God damn, twin. When we tell you to do something, you do it. You understand? I'm getting out. You understand? Not for you.
So, like, again, the cops are abusive, but this is what the reality is, right? Everyone should realize this. This is your reality as an American, not just as a black person or a person in poverty, that the most that these guys are going to happen to them is they possibly might get suspended. And even if they kill this guy, more than likely they're not going to be tried for murder. Cops can kill you, And other than the George Floyd case, which was such a nationally public case, and some other ones, more often than not, cops don't go to jail. So they can literally have license to kill you, right? And yeah, they might get fired, they might get suspended, but the damage they can do to you is just, much worse, right? They can ruin your life, you can end up going to prison, they could set you up, they can do all kinds of things, right? Now, if you live in a suburb, a smaller town, they don't have cops like this, because the cops like this would run into citizens, and these people are educated and have lawyers, right? People with money and lawyers, and they get rid of these kind of cops. And the police don't want these kind of cops, because the cops are there more to protect you and your assets and things like this. But when you go into the city, it's not the case, right? Where there are cops like this running around, people who have power. This is the need for the Second Amendment, because this would happen with the military. Eventually, the military gets turned on its own people, right? Like, this is part of the Constitution, not to have a standing military, because military often would go on the streets and subdue, riots and things like this, and, abuse people, take liberties with people, are the women, and, beat up the men and things like this, right? And so this happens. Like, this is reality of our life. Many of us are, we don't experience this or haven't ever experienced it. But once you see it happening, you should realize this is America, right? Like, Tyreek Hill was stupid. Like, he gave them attitude. Like, he was on equal footing because he was a celebrity. He was about to go to his game. You expected maybe special treatment. And you never know if it's going to go that way or not, right? But they weren't having it, pissed them off. And he provoked them by not cooperating the way they should, right? Everyone should learn to cooperate, because it's not like you're on equal footing. Like, you have a lot more to lose than they do. Like, you can't hit them. You hit them, you're assaulting a police officer, they'll beat the shit out of you and you'll do prison time, right? Like, you can't, you don't have the same level. They can beat the shit out of you. You can't do anything about it, right? Like, you can't, you can, the law isn't on your side. They can be the abusive cops. The law is on their side, right?
What we tell you, you're a little confused. I'm getting out, bro.
You're a little effing confused.
Too late.
All right, bro, take me to jail, bro. Do what you gotta do, bro.
We are. We will.
Good, bro.
It is good.
Hey.
Don't worry about it. I hung up the phone. You stop crying.
Bro, y'all.
Don't move.
Stop crying. Like, the other thing is, these guys all have heavy accents. And so there's a heavy Cuban population there, and, other Hispanic groups that come to Miami and to Florida. But these are second generation. These aren't second generation guys who grew up in America with American citizenship. They sound like immigrants, right? And so you don't want immigrants coming in and policing your population. You want people who grew up in America, because, these people that come from these other countries, their experience with police and police power is a lot different than what Americans experience, right? I mean, they have abusive military occupations and things like this in these countries. And so these guys are coming in and growing up with, if they don't have, if they're growing up and Spanish is their first language, then they're more than likely not born here. And, this is the idea of immigrants coming in and being put into the police force, which is, a big concern for the Republicans. And, people are, this is one of the reasons, right?
Bro, you beating on my window like you crazy.
You set him up?
Why y'all beating on my window like y'all crazy for? Damn, yo, bro.
He's still talking back to him. Like, it's just, at some point you got to realize you're screwed. This guy had, Tyreek Hill does everything fast. Like, you see this in the Hard Knock show when they covered the Dolphins. He's really, he's one of the fastest men in the NFL. He's one of those small, dudes that just runs and is hyped up, and, he's got a very high motor, very hyper. And, he got into trouble with the law before some tapes were released by his wife or something. Like, there was some domestic abuse situation, or, there was some controversy. And, this isn't a good look for him, because, again, everyone's ragging on the cops, but, it's a bad situation for him to be acting like that, right? Like he's just, you realize that you have no power in the situation. Like you're at their mercy. There's people there on the side of the road, and there are people with cameras, and some of his teammates are going to pull up on him. But, if that wasn't the case, you never know what these guys are going to do, right? Because these guys are power hungry. These are bad cops, right? Like they're bad cops out there, and these guys are all bad cops.
Bro, dude, beating on my window like he crazy. I ain't do nothing, twin.
Hey, don't park there. Don't park there.
Hey. Hold on, bro. I just had surgery on my knee.
So that guy grabbing him aggressively. Now, again, he's talking back, and they're like, you don't get to talk to us like that. We have ultimate authority and power. These guys should all be fired, right? And I don't know what Miami Police Department's going to do, but these guys shouldn't be working there. And they don't know. I mean, this is a situation where they're caught just abusing somebody, right? And the guy's talking back, sure, but not like where you got to tackle him.
On my knee, bro. I just had surgery on my knee, bro. I just had surgery in your ears when we told you to put your window down, bro.
You should have had surgery on your ears when we told you to put your window down. So again, this is like some macho thing they're doing here.
Chill, bro. Hey, Joe New, bro. Back up. Hey, call Drew.
So he's saying call Drew, and I don't know if that's his agent or someone in the, someone in charge of this for the Dolphins. But that's one of his teammates who's going to get cuffed as well.
Hey, call Drew. Call Drew, bro. Call Drew. Hey, call Drew, bro. Hey, what? Hey, call Drew, bro. Just call Drew. Hey. I'm not doing anything. I'm not doing nothing. What am I doing that's wrong?
Hey, listen.
Hey, listen. Hey, man, they got Tyreek. The cops over here beating on him, man. They over here beating on Tyreek,
Listen,
man.
big man, don't park there, man. Just get in the car.
Hey, Drew, you gotta come, man.
Just get in the car.
Straight up the side, on the side of the,
Hey, get in the car. You're parked at
So these cops are doing this like they're driving to the game. So his teammates are passing him by. They're close to the stadium. And so all these people are seeing it. And at some point, I mean, they see he's got a $300,000 car, and he's, a receiver. And they're like, we don't give a fuck who you are, right? And like, no sense that this isn't going to go their way. Like, how many times have they been like this to people who aren't celebrities and this is being filmed by other people. They have the body cam footage, and like they're, on administrative leave. They all should be fired, but like they're, no sense. They're too stupid to realize how fucked they are right now, right? And Tyreek Hill's too stupid to realize how bad this thing could go for him. I mean, it's just this is like a stupid-a-thon here. Like, just.
the middle of the street.
I'm in the car.
You gotta go before you get a ticket.
Hey,
I'm
you're
not
in the car.
Who's the driver?
This is my car.
All right, move.
I'll take that.
You gotta move right now.
Coming, man.
Let me have your license. You're gonna have ticket too.
I'm coming.
Let me have your license. You're gonna have ticket. Let me have your license.
I'm leaving.
I'm not playing. Let me have your license.
Leaving. Yo, what's
Your
going
license
on?
right now.
Sir, what's going on,
Your license
man?
right now. You're not gonna give me your license?
So, like, this guy can barely speak English. I mean, he's got a heavy Spanish accent, and just this is like you're in Mexico or something, and somebody realizes like he's speaking to you because he knows you're in a country where they're speaking Spanish as their first language, right?
Hey,
the car and leave.
You're not gonna give me your license?
I'm leaving.
Let me have your license. Your license right now.
Sir, you want me
Hey,
to leave?
your license right now.
I'm leaving.
Or I'm gonna lock you up.
just told
Your
me to
license
leave.
right now.
He just told me to
Your
leave.
license right now.
Sir, he just-
You're dealing with me now.
Sir.
Your license right now.
They end up cuffing him. So this is not good. This is like there's a lot of bad things going on here that tells you like the future. But the worst thing is them not being. These are not American citizens policing these are guys with heavy accents, right? So I'm editing. Today's Thursday, September 12th. So this video will be up Friday. And when I posted this, I was unaware of anything happening or when I captured this, I wasn't aware of anything going on in Springfield, Ohio. And so we now know that there are immigrants policing Miami and arresting, I guess one of the biggest celebrities in Florida, the top football player right before a football game and abusing him. And we know that there's 20,000 Haitians, which comes from, Haiti's an island that's close to Florida, right? There's a connection, between Florida and Haiti. That's where most of the Haitians are. And we know that I know that there are a bunch of Ukrainians in a small southern town, I know personally some of these things, right? And so it's interesting how these things come together. I'm always intrigued by that. Like, I wasn't looking for any of this. Somebody sent me something on Springfield. My wife saw something about it, and then it came up in the debate, and the next thing you know, all those things, right? But I'd already shot this thing here. I'd already, I was aware of this instance, and there's no denying that these guys are clearly not born in America. These guys who are policing, one of the, I guess the biggest city in Florida. So there's a real concern here. And what I've been saying forever, and most of you guys don't care or don't get it or, whatever. Don't believe it, or it just doesn't matter to you. But Trump and the QBs and the flat earthers fucked us, right? I was watching Andrea Mitchell. I was just turned on the TV for lunch, and Andrea Mitchell came on, and she's horrible. And she was talking about this dog thing that Trump said. And she showed Trump getting off the plane, and she focused like they put a circle around a woman who was in front of Trump. And she was the one who started this rumor about the dogs. And she was on Trump's plane with her. And she also said that this woman was a big event in September in 2001, that event. And I might make another video on that. Somebody said that they're allowing people to post videos on that again. And I have, some great videos that I did on it because of my specific take on the thing. And I'm going to probably post that on Apocalypse now because something just came up. I think I have an extra day to do that after I get this one done. And so I can post that on my backup channel, see what happens with it. But in terms of this woman, she said that she was a denier of the big day in September 2001, right? That's what Andrea Mitchell's saying about this Trump person in front of her. But she's not a good one. She's not a truther. And they fucked the truth community because they've made the truth community silly by posting things that were obviously disinfo. Now, we all contributed. We all have done that. We've all posted things that weren't true because it was, we thought other people vetted it or whatever. It sounded good, right? I used to do it a lot when I first started this, and then I realized it was, not cool to do that. And then I realized I had to check everything, and some things I couldn't check before posting them. And then I don't talk about these things as much. Some of the just, the run-of-the-mill truther stuff, because the truth community has been completely compromised. And that's a big deal because when there are things out there you want to get up on the internet, now the people who are sheeple, they wanted to believe their relatives who've been telling them this stuff are full of shit. They wanted to believe their truther relatives and friends were full of shit, and they wanted to throw it in their faces. And so all this QB stuff and all this Trump stuff, who are not really truth-seeking people, all the crap that they've posted over the years, and the people like them, the Republican truthers that suck, and the Trumpers, and they post these things without any kind of proof, and so now you really can't talk about it. And, I don't even want to, because I don't want to talk to normies at all. I don't want to talk to sheeple at all. Like, I have no time for them. I don't need to. Like, I don't need to cultivate them as an audience. I don't need their votes, right? I'll get into that when I get into the election stuff. But for the rest of you and just humanity in general, it's hard to disseminate information anymore because of what the QBs and Trump did. And I told you guys this was going to happen. I said this is the way that they're playing it, is that they put out ridiculous disinformation and then people in the truth community publish it. It doesn't take many people. Now Elon Musk is that piece of shit. That CIA operative is a part of this as well. And they post it and then people run with it. And then they debunk it and they make fun about how stupid you are and how wrong you are and why you're so dangerous to the country. And they're going to continue to do this. And so, people have to wake up to this reality. You have to post things with a grain of salt. Don't announce things as fact just because you saw it on the internet and you think it's fact when it's clearly not. And most of it's disinformation now because there's more disinfo agents out there in the truth community than there are, regular truthers. All the truthers that were there, people I used to listen to before I used to post, and people who were my contemporaries, or most of them are gone, right? Like so many truther people just gave up because they got harassed out of the, community, or they couldn't make money because of the demonetization, just all the things, right? You guys know all of it, right? Like there's all these, there's all these ways that it just became just too, difficult and time consuming and unrewarding to post truther stuff. And so people who are organic truthers have left, and now they have all these shills and all these replacement people, all this kind of stuff, right? Replacing the real truthers with people who have been compromised, and the whole Trump stuff and all that stuff. People got tired of getting harassed by the flat earthers, the dumbass flat earthers, and the dumbass cubies and things. And I'll get into this more when I talk about him pandering to stupid people. So let me segue into the Taylor Swift piece, and then we can get back into the debate. Okay, I want to cover this before we get back into the debate. The Trump fairy tale, Kamala was badly beaten, advisors wary of second face-off, swing state scramble. It's just manufactured, and I'm going to tear her apart in this debate even worse than the last one, my coverage of it, because there's nothing there of any substance. And they just, can make anything up, right? And so this was, it says here, she ate him for lunch. Donald Trump rattled by VP Harris as even Fox News blasts his performance. That's their big thing. And they use this thumbnail of this condescending expression she kept on giving, which they're saying is winning. And it isn't winning. Like do anybody like that person? I mean, not Kamala Harris, the person who makes that expression. Like if you saw this expression in a movie, would that be the heroes? Would that be somebody who's that people like? Is it a likable person that makes that expression? No. Nobody likes this guy, right? Nobody likes that. And she made it throughout, like her obnoxious, her condescending look and looking down on him like he was so beneath her and the people that believe what he believes. And all that shit backfires, which I'll get into as I cover the debate. Kamala Harris broke Donald Trump, right? The Atlantic. If you want to know who won the debate, Fox News, the moment it ended, they talk about Trump losing, all these things, right? And so it's just this bizarre, universe we live in now where they just make anything up, and Harris dominates as Trump gets defensive, and they can say anything, right? Trump overperformed. It was the best debate Trump has had as president, his presidential debates. It was his, most restrained debate, and they wanted him to be, they wanted Trump to be off-putting and to be obnoxious and be an a-hole. And he didn't do that as much as he normally does. So it was a great performance from him. Where Kamala Harris, well, I'll show you as we go through it, right? So then there's this. This came up in my phone last night. This is spectacular. So it's the hammer guy, and I show you the meme for the hammer guy, but, time permitting, it's just not.
The Harris for President campaign now has the two most perfectly timed and most important endorsements of this campaign. Joe Biden's 27-minute timed endorsement after he said, I'm not the candidate. Perfect timing. This, about 27 minutes after the end of the debate. And it
boom, about 27 minutes. He's really into 27.
It's so important, I think, to the people who are going to be consuming that Taylor Swift endorsement, including those fathers of 8-year-old girls. And that she said, I watched the debate.
Yes.
I didn't decide this yesterday. I watched this candidate against the other candidate, and I thought about it, and here I am. And here's my endorsement. The timing on it is absolutely exquisite. The wording of it is flawless.
Flawless wording. Flawless wording from Taylor Swift.
She is ready for it. In a much-anticipated post, Taylor Swift endorsed Kamala Harris after her fiery debate with Donald Trump.
Let's just talk about what this means.
What does it mean?
Not just that she's
Dana,
a celebrity. She has people who are, like Swiftologists. There are people
like Scientologists, but for Taylor Swift, you mean like a cult?
Who are young people, young women, who might not already be engaged in in politics who read.
She loves Taylor.
Read and listen to.
She wants people to know it. She puts on a T-shirt.
Every single thing that she says and love her. And if she makes a difference, even on the margins in a race like this, that is a huge difference.
It is always significant to have the most powerful force in pop culture on your side. The one contrarian view I will say is that in this moment, the thing the Harris campaign needs perhaps the most is to figure out how to reach men. They've got to figure it out here in Pennsylvania. They've got to figure out how to reach.
I think Kamala Harris is really good at reaching men. Oh, wait, that's reach around. I'm sorry.
Black men. And I'm not sure Taylor Swift helps them with that.
I don't think it does, right? So, okay, so a few things I want to say before I get back into debate coverage here about all of this stage stuff. So first of all, her saying that she needs men and black men, like why aren't black men liking Kamala Harris? Well, that debate isn't going to help her. They see the expressions, the condescending expression. You know, she's looking down, you silly man. The stage things that she said. She doesn't deliver good stage lines. She's not a good actress. It was all performative. And I'll show you that as we go through the debate. But it's off-putting to men. And you guys know, you men know, we watched it. All those expressions, all those things, the way she's being, those are huge red flags for men, right? Like, you know, if you dislike Donald Trump, maybe you don't vote. I mean, like I said, you don't have to vote. And I think not voting is the best, you know, this is the best thing to do. Because, you know, you're not endorsing this circus. And they're both in on it, right? But, you know, in terms of Fox News, I haven't seen anything from Fox News saying Trump won the debate. And so that's concerning because Fox News bailed on Trump last election. And they're the only ones that are there that can put out, you know, legitimize some of these claims. And not that Fox News is respected, but they're more respected than people on the internet. And so if they're going to fuck Trump and Fox News, you know, they compromised Fox News. Fox News agreed with it because Fox News likes those neocons. And the neocons made a deal with Joe Biden. So we'll see how the election goes. But it's nowhere near as entertaining as I thought it was going to be when Joe Biden had that disastrous debate. Because that was something new. The guy had a meltdown, and all of a sudden the media turned on him. But it was only for a short period of time, and now they're shilling more than they ever shilled for Joe Biden, for Kamala Harris. They've manufactured this character, and they're just lying about it, and they're gaslighting people to what they see. People can see she's unlikable, but then they're told by the media that they're now watching because it's election time, and they just make up stuff, and people are too simple-minded to, you know, to trust their own views, and they look to these experts and pundits to tell them what they just saw. And it also backfires, which I'll show you as we go through it, you know, with this emphasis on this idea that she needs to win over men if she's going to win, and that her performance ain't going to do that, right? And I think they know that she kind of failed with the demographics that they need to win over because they want another debate. Why would they want another debate if she rocked it, right? And so, you know, Trump didn't do what they thought he was going to do. They thought Trump was going to be more triggered and he was going to be more, you know, he was a little bit, but he wasn't like we usually expect him to be. He was much more subdued. And they weren't counting on that. And so all the things that she said at the beginning of the debate that Trump was going to do, all the things she tried to do to, you know, set the framework and all the effort they put into triggering him, it was, you know, mild at best. And, you know, we'll pick that up in a moment. But I want to say this, you know, tying this into the whole thing I was saying about the truth community. And for me, I don't want dummies. Like I say things all the time to get rid of, and, you know, it hurts me in terms of my, you know, my audience and the, you know, channel and, you know, economically. But I don't want stupid people. I don't want low consciousness people. You know, there's enough crap out there for stupid people, low consciousness people. I want people who are, you know, have a, you know, the ability for abstract thought and are open-minded and are looking for, you know, the truth, not just people who come in with a rigid belief system. They're still embedded in the left-right paradigm, and they just want someone to validate their remedial beliefs. Like, I don't do that. I don't need to do that. And that's a blessing I have, right? But the Trump people and the Kamala people have to pander to probably the worst group. people who are complete sheeple and think they need to vote, but they can't make up a decision. They can't make up their minds. And maybe if they realize both people suck so bad and they feel like they have to vote, maybe they're not that bad. But all the rest of them who can't see, through any of this stuff, and, the people that are loyal to them, the people that are their base, the Democrats and the Republicans, have to neglect those people and go after these independent voters who, are kind of the worst people, like people who are riding the fence and hand-wringing and, cheaply withholding their vote. They want to be catered to or whatever the fuck their problem is. That's the people that Kamala Harris and Donald J. Trump have to pander to. And it's just sick. Like, it's pathetic. And the news media and all the rest of these, in these 10 states, again, it's only these 10 states of undecided voters who can't pick a party. Like they go back and forth. If you go back and forth, you must know that your party sucks. And maybe they have issues that they're not being addressed, and they're hoping that if they vote for this party, they'll finally get some support. And, their way of life is dying. And they're too stupid to realize that, they're fucked just like everyone else because the system is collapsing and there's no fix to it. But they just go back and forth and between two horrible parties. And it's the worst of the worst, right? And it's just the pandering to low consciousness, dumbass people. And that's what this debate is. And, I don't know how it'll play because I don't really have contact with those people. I don't know what works for them. I don't know what they're able to see. But if they can't see how staged and what a failure Kamala Harris is, then, it's just another level of us being completely screwed over. Like, we have no chance. All right, so let's get back into the debate here. Okay, so this woman's got demonic eyes here. So in terms of my coverage, I'm going to cover the least amount of this as possible. It's kind of already over with. Mostly they're focusing on Trump's things that he said. Now, who won the debate and lost the debate is not no one can really decide that, right? The people who are, the deciders in this case are those independent voters who haven't decided who they're voting for in the swing states that are going to determine this election. And if it's men that are, the demographic they're fighting over, then she did not win this debate, right? See, they're judging it based in their, they were going to come out with a prejudged, they already had a predetermined outcome. But they should have been judging it on her ability to trigger Trump, because that was their whole strategy, is to get Trump ranting and raving and talk about what a lunatic he was. Of course, the dog comment didn't help Trump, some of these other things. But for those people who watched the debate and had seen Trump debate before, he's better. Like things that might have been off-putting to them before, he's been better. She wasn't. The things that people didn't like about her before in her debates were even more the case because she was only two people debating. They used to have like 10 people on the stage when she debated. I mean, they had to split the debates up between two different nights. And she would get like 3 moments of screen time. And she was still off-putting. People still found her annoying. And so with a 2-hour debate, I don't know how much people watched the whole thing, especially men. So let's get into it here. Got these demonic eyes going with this.
Changed. So then why have so many of your policy positions changed?
So my values have not changed, and I'm going to discuss at least every point that you've made. But in particular, let's talk about fracking because we're here in Pennsylvania. I made that very clear in 2020. I will not ban fracking. I have not banned fracking as Vice President of the United States.
Okay, so I covered this part before. Let's just move ahead a little bit.
Leader who actually understands the strength is not in beating people down, it's in lifting people up. I intend to be...
So her whole strategy was to beat him down and mock him and look condescendingly at him. I mean, their whole strategy is to demonize Trump and Trump supporters. And so that's what the Democrats, that's what they're running on. They don't really have their own platform. Their platform is that they're not this guy, right? And that's been the way the last, 4 or 5 years, and really the last 8 years, but specifically particularly the last 5 years.
That president.
President Trump, your response?
First of all, I wasn't given $400 million. I wish I was. My father was a Brooklyn builder, Brooklyn, Queens, and a great father, and I learned a lot from him. But I was given a fraction of that, a tiny fraction, and I built it into many, many billions of dollars, many, many billions And when people see it, they are even surprised. So,
Yeah, because oftentimes it's less than you say it is. And look at the guy. And that's that look, right? See, when men see this look, men do not want to see this look, right? When a woman looks at him like this, like, you stupid man, and sometimes you deserve the look, but women who look at men like this, men don't want to be around. And she does it throughout, right? It's a condescending, judgmental, I'm so superior to you. I mean, she's saying that she wants to move forward and turn the page. Then make your campaign about you and not him, right? They're making their campaign about him because there's so many people that hate him. And they want to deflect from her lack of substance as a person and as a, persona. But that's not a winning expression. You can't say that this was good strategy for, men in Pennsylvania who haven't decided to vote yet. Like, Pennsylvania is like the big state. They're debating here in Philadelphia, and all these men in rural areas that she desperately needs to win aren't going to be happy about this expression.
So we don't have to talk about that. Fracking, she's been against it for 12 years. Defund the police, she's been against that forever.
It's not
she
true.
gave all that stuff up very wrongly, very horribly, and everybody's laughing at it, okay? They're all laughing at it. She gave up at least 12 and probably 14 or 15 different policies. Like, she was big on defund the police. In Minnesota,
That's
she
not true.
went
That's
out,
not true.
wait a
She
minute,
totally was. She came out and said various things. Another thing she did? She supported Jussie Smollett. She came out and tweeted, and she was trying to be out in front of that, and then it turned out he was a fake, and then she had to backtrack.
I'm talking now, if you don't mind, please. Does that sound familiar?
And so she had said that to, Kavanaugh in the hearing, and she was hoping to get that moment. That's why they wanted to have open mics. And he ended up reversing that, which is a big moment for him. And whatever you want to say, she was hoping to do that to him, and he did it to her. And she doesn't know what to do with it.
She went out in Minnesota and wanted to let criminals that killed people.
Like, who told her this was a good expression? Like, who in her campaign told her, yeah, make this bitchy expression, condescending expression, and look at him throughout the debate like that, like he's, worthless piece of shit. Like, who told you to do that, right? Again, if you're going after men voters, if that's the big demographic for you, that ain't going to win men over, right? Men, are repelled by that frickin' expression.
That burned down Minneapolis. She went out and raised money to get them out of jail. She did things that nobody would ever think of. Now she wants to do transgender.
So she's an innovator? Like, we saw this stuff already.
Operations on illegal aliens that are in prison. This is a radical left liberal that would do this. She wants to confiscate your guns, and she will never allow fracking in Pennsylvania. If she won the election, fracking in Pennsylvania will end on day one. Just to finish one thing, so important in my opinion. So I got the oil business going like nobody has ever done before.
You did such a great job. You're such a wonderful person. You know who says so? You do. Who's your biggest fan? You are.
When they took over, they got rid of it, started getting rid of it, and the prices were going up the roof. They immediately
went up the roof and down the other side, down the gutter.
Let these guys go to where they were. I would have been 5 times 4.
See, he's definitely not he's not articulate as it used to be. He's starting to, he slurs his speech a little bit, but he also he doesn't express himself the way he used to. There's definitely slippage.
5 times higher, because you're talking about 3.5 years ago. They got it up to where I was because they had no choice, because the prices of energy were quadrupling and doubling. You saw what happened to gasoline. So they said, let's go back to Trump. But if she won the election, the day after that election, they'll go back to destroying our country, and oil will be dead, fossil fuel will be dead, we'll go back to windmills, and we'll go back to solar, where they need a whole desert to get some energy to come out of it. You ever see a solar plant? By the way, I'm a big fan of solar, but they take 400, 500 acres of desert
President
soil.
Trump, we have a
These
lot of
are not good
issues
things
that we
for the
have to get
environment,
to.
as
We're
she
out of time.
understands.
Thank you.
Lindsay, thank you. We have an election in just 56 days. And I want to talk about the peaceful transfer of power, which, of course, we all know is a cornerstone of our democracy, and the role of a president in a moment of crisis. Mr. President, on January...
So again, you know, the most recent thing is it's come out that they ran a guy who has dementia, which I said back in 2019, and Kamala knew it in the debate. So we all saw it. They all knew it. They ran the guy. And whatever happened on, you know, the big event in January, like it's been so played out. And they talked about last debate, and they're going to bring it up here. They're not hammering Kamala on the issues that she's getting hammered on by the Fox News and the Republicans, right? And so that's like, you know, I mean, completely rigged debate, right? Because they're bringing up all the issues that are bad for Trump. They said a little bit of Kamala changing her opinions on some things, just typical political stuff. Trump was saying it was 3-on-1, which it was, right? They're definitely leaning, you know, they're not being objective. And so these are all things that you would say. Like there was problems with the officials in a game. You would say, yeah, there were some bad calls here. So they just came in with a predetermined outcome that Kamala won, and they're just, you know, lying about what actually happened here. And again, I look at it like Trump did better than I've ever seen him do at minimizing his, you know, his dysfunctional personality and his getting triggered and talking about things that push people away from him. And Kamala Harris was not a real person. Let's get more into it here. She just was like she just gives scripted lines throughout the whole debate here.
6th, you told your supporters to march to the Capitol. You said you would be right there with them. The country and the world saw what played out at the Capitol that day, the officers coming under attack. Aides in the West Wing say you watched it unfold on television off the Oval Office. You did send out tweets, but it was more than 2 hours before you sent out that video message telling your supporters to go home. Is there anything you regret about what you did on that day?
Again, like getting into what he regrets, right? Hey, Kamala, do you regret for getting on your knees and servicing a 60-year-old man to get your first position as a, you know, prominent politician? Do you regret that? Do you regret backing Jussie Smollett and then later finding out it was a lie, right? Any number of things. And so, you know, she has things that you regret saying that Joe Biden was, was a coherent man when it's obvious to everyone he has dementia, right? Do you regret all those things? You know, like there's none of that. They're not even asking her any of these kind of questions because this is rigged, and you know he still might win. Like I don't even know what the real polls. No one knows, right? No one knows how much they're going to be able to cheat or not, and you know all of these possibilities are there. But that's a completely one-sided point of view. The other thing is what I've said about these dopes that were up there. You know the Q shaman. The QB shaman, and all these other like morons that were up there in the Capitol, you know, they make them sound like they were criminal masterminds and you know they were insurgents. You know, they were somehow going to overthrow the government when they're behaving like dopes, and they call him stupid, like they call Trump stupid, but then they talk about him like he's a criminal mastermind. Like you can't have it both ways, right? Because like that was just an absolute mess that happened. Trump is completely responsible for it. He got totally worked on that. Like he went up there, gave the speech, and they already had that thing set up, and he didn't even know, and he just totally fell into it. That's his fault. Like he is stupid. Like he did the same thing with Operation Warp Speed and all the stuff to do with COVID, closing down the economy. They completely owned him and worked him, and they knew how to do it, which to make him sound, you know, anything where Trump is told that he can do something better than somebody else that did it before, he'll totally fall for that bait, right?
You just said a thing that isn't covered. Peacefully and patriotically, I said during my speech, not later on. Peacefully and patriotically. And nobody...
Because crowds and mobs listen so carefully to what you're saying. That's massive mob that you had. Some of them like, you know, inside shills and agents like agents of the 3-letter agencies or whatever it was, and so of course that's like that's your get out of jail free card, but no one's buying that shit.
The other side was killed. Ashley Babbitt was shot by an out-of-control police officer that should have never, ever shot her. It's a disgrace. But we didn't do this group of people that have been treated so badly. I ask, what about all the people that are pouring into our country and killing people that she allowed to pour in? She was the border czar, remember that. She was the border czar. She doesn't want to be called the border czar because she's embarrassed by the border. In fact, she said at the beginning, oh, I'm surprised you're not talking about the border yet. That's because she knows what a bad job they've done. What about those people?
That's not true. Look at her.
What are they going to be prosecuted?
That look right there. Like, nobody likes that look. Men do not like that look, right? If you're a woman and you're giving this look, you are like, it's like a repellent, right? It's like men repellent, like a mosquito repellent for men.
When are these people from countries all over the world, not just South America, they're coming in from all...
Like, you know, if some guy's approaching you and you don't want him to do this, you know, you're a younger woman, you know, master these looks. You know, you want to get a guy away from you? He's doing full fish boy here. Master these types of looks. Master the Kamala expressions.
Over the world, David, all over the world. And crime rates are down all over the world because of it.
But let me just
when
ask
are those, David, when are those people going to be prosecuted? When are the people that burned down Minneapolis going to be prosecuted? Or in Seattle? They went into Seattle. They took over a big percentage of the city of Seattle.
That was awesome. Remember they had this place called Chaz and Chad, and they put these cameras up, and I was just watching the cameras, and we were watching what's going on in this little, you know, these sovereign nations that were opening up in these liberal cities. And the cops just withdrew, and then things fell apart. And there was a park. They had a park there, and they wouldn't let white people into the park. There was white people preventing white people from being into the park because they wanted them to experience what it's like to be marginalized. That was great. Like, you know, we need to see that. I wouldn't mind seeing that again. That was hilarious.
When are those people going to be prosecuted?
But let me just ask
you. You might ask her that question.
You were the president. You were watching it unfold on television. It's a very simple question as we move forward toward another election. Is there anything you regret about what you did on that day?
Like, why are you even asking that question? The word regret is not something Trump even understands, right?
Yes, sir.
I had nothing to do with that other than they asked me to make a speech. I showed up for a speech. I said, I think it's going to be big. I went to Nancy Pelosi and the mayor of Washington, D.C., and the mayor put it back in writing, as you know. I said, you know, this is going to be a very big rally or whatever you want to call it. And again,
there it is.
It wasn't done by me. It was done by others. I said, I'd like to give you 10,000 National Guard or soldiers. They rejected me. Nancy Pelosi rejected me. It was just 2 weeks ago. Her daughter has a tape of her saying she is fully...
This is looking down your nose at somebody. Like, it's just snooty. And, you know, it's like she grew up with these educated, you know, professorial type of parents who were PhDs, and she grew up in these college towns, and like, you know, just this disdain and looking down at people, you know, like Trump or whoever it is, right? How much better she is than they are than them. And this isn't a winning. You know, they're saying she won. They got to talk about this, right? Because it's here for almost half the debate. The expressions.
Responsible for what happened. They want to get rid of that tape. It would have never happened if Nancy Pelosi and the mayor of Washington did their jobs. I wasn't responsible for security. Nancy Pelosi was responsible. She didn't do her job.
The question was about you as president, not about former Speaker Pelosi. But I do want Vice President Harris.
So again, this is this little jabs that they're doing here.
First to respond here.
I was at the Capitol on January 6th.
She was there. It was traumatic for her.
The vice president-elect. I was also an acting senator. I was there. And on that day, the President of the United States incited a violent mob to attack our nation's capital, to desecrate.
She has a horrible cadence. She's just not good at public speaking. She's not good connecting with people. She's not good at being a politician. She'll get maybe better over time, but it's still so performative. And I want to get more into this. There's one more point about what they were trying to accomplish. It's coming up. I'll show you when we come to that part of the debate. But she's just reading off a script. Like, these are just things that they hammered into her in terms of, like, you know, things that she was supposed to say. And it's almost like they had the questions because ABC is basically pandering to her. You know, they're putting this up on the tee for her, right? And so, I mean, it's just like knowing the answers to the questions on a test before you get the test, right? And she's not good at it. And they're not calling her out on that. And, I don't know how much the dummies that haven't decided yet have the ability to perceive this, but it's easy to see, right?
Our nation's capital, on that day, 140 law enforcement officers were injured, and some died.
These are things that she said in speeches and things that she or other people said at the convention. These are Democratic talking points. It's not anything, organic. It's just things that she'll say. These are, like set answers. It's like a, scripted response from a salesperson. When you're asked a question, when a salesperson's asked a question, they'll recite something like this, right? And so it's just repeating something that they say over and over again, the Democrats and her.
And understand, the former president has been indicted and impeached for exactly that reason. But this is not an isolated situation. Let's remember.
She's implying that the justice system is fair, right? And that it's arbitrary, and there's no political, there's no politics behind these things that have happened here.
Charlottesville, where there was a mob of people carrying tiki torches.
This is that great moment. That was my favorite moment because tiki torches, these were preppy guys wearing polo shirts. They look like they maybe were, recruits for like interns for the FBI or something, or fresh out of college, and it was goofy. The whole thing looked goofy. It didn't look like, it looked completely staged, remember? And Joe Biden's thing has been debunked, and they keep on repeating it, and these guys never call them on it, right?
Spewing anti-Semitic hate. And what did the president then at the time say? There were fine people on each side. Let's remember that
these were things Joe Biden said. There's things that she's saying in the debate that Joe Biden said, right? These are talking points that the Biden team thought were important, and Biden, didn't nail all of these points, but they were the same points. These are all things that, if Biden was giving this debate, these were things that he would say. And so she's reading from the exact same Biden script, which is going to be important coming up.
When it came to the Proud Boys, a militia, the former president said, stand back and stand by.
Stand down and stand by.
So for everyone watching who remembers what January 6th was,
we were so traumatized.
Say, we don't have to go back.
I mean, those wonderful politicians having to watch the QB shaman come in and urinate on their furniture. It was horrible for all of us.
Let's not go back. We're not going back.
We're not going back. Where have I heard that before?
Time to turn the page. And if that was a bridge too far for you, well, there is a place in our campaign for you to stand for country, to stand for our democracy, to stand for rule of law, and to end the chaos, and to end the approach that is about attacking the foundations of our democracy because you don't like the outcome. And be clear on that point. Donald Trump, the candidate, has...
Like, just the way she articulates everything, and it's so, artificial, because she has nothing. Like, she's not somebody who could just come up with her own shit, right? Like, I just sit here every day and talk, and whether you agree or not, whether it has any value or not, it's coming, from me or through me, and it's, it's original to whatever I think, right? Of course, there's other people I've experienced, ideas from and books I've read and all these things, right? And the accumulation of you of your internal world, and there's, divine connection, your soul, and if you're able to connect to God, there's a channeling aspect, right? So it isn't specifically all you, it's not original to you, but it's what's inside of you. When you're able to talk, spontaneously and answer things without just parroting something somebody else said, plagiarizing what other people said, or being trained to answer like some sort of a parrot who's just repeating what they've been told to say by their handlers and things, right? And so, she's not able to do that. Like, I've never seen, and when she does do that, she says shit that the American people don't want to hear. What she believes as a person, growing up in liberal California, college towns, and in Canada and these places with, parents that were radical liberals and a dad who was a Marxist who really wasn't part of her life, but it had some influence there. Her upbringing, who she is as a person, and when she talks about things, the way she was telling everyone to be woke, everyone needs to be more woke. That's not what the people in Pennsylvania want to hear, that she's trying to earn their votes. And so she has to create this artificial persona. There's something more to this I want to say here in a second.
Said in this election, there will be a bloodbath if this and the outcome of this election is not to his liking. Let's turn the page on this. Let's not go back. Let's chart a course for the future and not go backwards to the past.
Okay, so she's going to say this thing about you're not writing against Joe Biden. And so she's got a big problem because what they want is a change candidate. The American people were polled, and they said they didn't want to see Donald Trump and Joe Biden run again. Now, the Republicans they've been hijacked by the Trumpers. The Republicans had no choice but to run Trump. They couldn't get rid of him, and they've tried. They can't get rid of him. But the Democrats said, well, we can get rid of Biden, and they realized that they were better off running her than Biden. And so she is trying to run as a change. We don't want to go back. We want to turn the page because they don't want this Biden versus Trump part 3 or 2 or whatever it is here. They don't want the Hillary Clinton and Trump. They want to just move on from this whole Trump and, these old politicians. And so that's where they think Kamala is going to win people over. People are just, I myself want to see this era end. Like I think most of us do. Trump is just so played out. And, the Democrats are always going to be able to run somebody of, completely inferior in terms of her ability to articulate things on her own because they can just run against Trump. I mean, they've been doing everything that they do, the news media and everything that the Democratic Party does is make it about Trump. And that just has to end, right? And so they want to do that. But the problem is she's an incumbent vice president. And some would say she's kind of the sitting president because Joe Biden has disappeared completely. And she's in charge of the Democratic Party. And the only way to make this thing work was for her to just embrace the Biden platform. So the Biden people already had a platform. They already had policies. Does anyone think that she's going to get rid of Biden's policies? And the other thing is she couldn't look like she's stabbing him in the back. So she has to still tell everybody that he was completely lucid and he didn't have any brain functioning issues. And everyone knows that's bullshit, right? And so she's in a horrible position because the Biden policies are really bad and Biden won't admit to them. And every time Biden talks, like when they've campaigned together and at the convention, he talks about all the accomplishments in his record, right? And she has to say that all of his policies are good because otherwise she's stabbing him in the back. But she's trying to run against the past. And Joe Biden, there's no more person that's the past than Joe Biden. He's like the oldest politician, the oldest president ever, the sitting president. And she's got to divorce herself from him. And she's going to say in a moment, I'm not Joe Biden. You're not running against Joe Biden. But he is, because the Biden team, and they've brought in some of the Obama team, and they also have some neocons, the Republican warmongers who they had to make a deal with. And those are the policies and the people who are the policies have been created by those people and also her platform. And so they couldn't create a new platform, and she doesn't have her own ideas. So there's no change here, right? So she wants to make it like Biden is gone and she's running in Biden's place, but in reality, she's just a new face to the Biden platform, right? And that's a complete failure. And all these people know what I just said. All these pundits, they know that she's trying to run as a change. Let's turn the page. Let's bring out a new generation of politicians. But she's a part of that club, and the people handling her are the people that ran the oldest candidate. These are the people that were in charge of the no fucking malarkey campaign slogan, right? And so she's screwed, and that's evident in the debate. She's not defining herself as something different than Joe Biden, because he's actually saying the same words that Joe Biden said, not only in his speeches, but in the debate with Trump, right? She's repeating some of these same lines, and these are all just lines that she's been given.
Let me just follow up here.
It was a different term, and it was a term that related to energy because they have destroyed our energy business. That was where bloodbath was. Also, on Charlottesville, that story has been, as you would say, debunked. Laura Ingraham, Sean Hannity, Jesse, all of these people, they covered
Fox News people.
it. If they go an extra sentence, they will see.
Again, that look that she gives, right? Like, no dude wants to see that look. I mean, show me a dude that, isn't like some sadomasochistic, messed up, insane dude that would want to be looked at like that and see some woman look at him like that. And she's really bad at it too. She's good at doing this look. It's just an off-putting look.
It was perfect. It was debunked in almost every newspaper, but they still bring it up, just like they bring 2025 up. They bring all of this stuff up. I ask you this. You talk about the Capitol. Why are we allowing these millions of people to come through on the southern border? How come she's not doing anything? And I'll tell you what I would do, and I would be very proud to do it. I would say we would both leave this debate right now. I'd like to see her go down to Washington, D.C. during this debate because we're wasting a lot of time. Go down to, because she's been so bad, it's so ridiculous. Go down to Washington, D.C. and let her sign a bill to close up the border because they have the right to do it. They don't need bills. They have the right to do it.
So he means an executive order, and he's not being very clear here. She should go down and have Joe Biden sign an executive order. That's what he means.
President of the United States, you'll get him out of bed, you'll wake him up at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, you'll say, come on down to the office, let's sign a bill. If he signs a bill that the border is closed, all he has to do is say it to the Border Patrol, who are phenomenal. If they do that, the border is closed.
Mr.
Those
President,
people are killing many people, unlike J6.
We talked immigration here tonight. I do want to focus on this next issue to both of you because it really brings us this into focus, truth in these times that we're living in.
Truth. This motherfucker's talking about truth.
Mr. President, for 3.5 years after you lost the 2020 election, you repeatedly falsely claimed that you won, many times saying you won in a landslide. In the past couple of weeks leading up to this debate, you have said, quote, you lost by a whisker, that you, quote, didn't quite make it. That
so again, there are real pertinent issues that are Joe Biden is senile. And a guy stepped down because he was too old to do his job. And people wanted that all the way back in January, 70% of Americans. But it was for a couple of years people were talking about this. More and more people were talking about this, right? People are saying Joe Biden's just too old. They're acknowledging what everyone was seeing. And they allowed him to be president. And Kamala Harris said, oh, yeah, he's lucid, all these things that we know, right? And so that's something that happened recently, a big thing that happened. And that's just done with. Like, there's no consequences for that. The Democratic Party for lying and propping this guy up, and Joe Biden resisting being taken down, how the Democratic establishment had to turn on him, all these things, right? They've let that go. And I thought that, I didn't, believe that they could do it this blatantly, but they are because you have a dumbed down, sheeple-like population, and the people who haven't decided who to vote for yet are, and again, I'm not saying they should vote for Trump, like I wouldn't vote for either one of them, and I'm not going to vote for either one of them, right? But these people who can't decide, right, they're not going to care about those things. But they're asking something, like they keep on harking on this event in January, these old things with Trump, right? But they're not bringing up any of the controversies that Kamala Harris has, and she has a lot of them. She has a lot to answer for. Like everything that Joe Biden did, she's a part of that administration, and the American people don't like the Joe Biden administration. They are siding with Trump. They think Trump will have a better economy, and they think Trump will be better on immigration. She has abortion, and that's about it, right? And so this is where they're doing like complete shillery work here.
You came up a little bit short.
I said that?
Are you now acknowledging that you lost in 2020?
No, I don't acknowge that at all.
But
I
you
said
did
that
say
sarcastically. You know that. It was.
He didn't say it sarcastically. He just didn't speak well. There's the fish boy.
Oh, we lost by a whisker. That was said sarcastically. Look, There's so much proof. All you have to do is look at it. And they should have sent it back to the legislatures for approval. I got almost 75 million votes, the most votes any sitting president has ever gotten. I was told if I got 63, which was what I got in 2016, you can't be beaten. The election, people should never be thinking about an election as fraudulent.
You know, so this is what they told her to do the whole time. You know, various expressions. And so I saw it as a complete failure for the obvious reasons. Like, because they wanted him to do this. She's the one who's talking when it isn't her turn. Like Trump got to, you know, dress her down by saying, I'm talking right now, which is what she did before. Like they were hoping she would have that moment, and he got that moment, right? And so for them to claim that she won when this is like her, I mean, she has resting bitch face for like the whole debate, right?
We need two things. We need walls, and we have to have it. We have to have borders, and we have to have good elections. Our elections are bad. And a lot of these illegal immigrants coming in, they're trying to get them to vote. They can't even speak English. They don't even know what country they're in practically. And these people are trying to get them to vote. And that's why they're allowing them to come into our country.
I did watch all of these pieces of video. I didn't detect the sarcasm, lost by a whisker. We didn't quite make it. And we should just point out.
Again, he's calling bullshit on Trump. So, which you have to point out as pundits, right? You have these pundits, and they're always wrong. You know, they were wrong when they said Trump had no chance of winning in 2016, and they were all, you know, they got in their face. They were wrong about the economy. They were wrong about all these things, right? They've been wrong, and they covered up for Joe Biden now for years. And so they're like horrible. No one believes in these people. Like, you know, they're not real experts because they're told what to say, right? They're given their opinions. They, you know, they know what to say. They don't even have to be told. Like there's a clip I just watched. There was some guy, and he was doing body language analysis on the debate, and I knew it was going to be how it was an FBI profiler. I knew he was going to bullshit about how Kamala Harris looked so confident when she was so rattled and shook at the beginning of the video. I mean, the beginning of the debate, and then all the, you know, bad expressions. And then Hillary Clinton said, "Oh, she smoked him," and I'm like, "Yeah, of course she's going to say that. Like they're all going to say that. They lie all the time. Each side is going to say that they won the debate, right?" And then, you know, the Trump campaign will cry foul, which is true. These guys are ganging up on him. But again, he should have like pushed for something on Fox. He agreed to this ABC debate maybe because he thought Joe Biden was so bad. You know, whatever it was, right?
Out here as clarification, and you know this, you and your allies, 60 cases in front of many judges, many of them
no
Republican.
judge looked at it
And said
they
there was
said
no
we didn't have
widespread
standing.
fraud.
That's the other thing. They said we didn't have standing, a technicality. Can you imagine a system where a person in an election doesn't have standing? The president of the United States doesn't have standing.
What kind of way is this to run the country is what he ended up saying, remember?
That's how we lost. If you look at the facts, and I'd love to have you'll do a special on it. I'll show you.
Yeah, they're not doing a special on it.
Georgia, and I'll show you Wisconsin, and I'll show you Pennsylvania, and I'll show you. We have so many facts and statistics, but you know what? That doesn't matter because we have to solve the problem that we have right now. That's old news. And the problem that we have right now is.
And so they, you know, they wanted Trump to talk about January 6th. They wanted him to talk about the election. I mean, these are things, crowd sizes was something they baited him into. But the rest of these things, they're asking him questions about this. And, you know, they're saying that the right answer, that Trump's losing for not saying, yeah, I lost. Admitting that he lost and admitting that if he loses this time, he won't fight it, right? And this is going to come down to some kind of a squeaker, and it's going to result in legal battles, and whoever wins is going to be delegitimized. I mean, you're going to see it, right? Like I can't imagine this will be some clear-cut win on election night. There has to be controversy. You know, their biggest asset is Trump. If they're going to get rid of this guy, they're going to find ways to keep him going, like through legal challenges to the results of the election. I mean, you know, more of what we saw in 2020 or whatever it is. Like you'll see it unfold and you'll be like, yeah, this is exactly what Paul was talking about. Like there'll be some stuff that they have planned here. If Trump is going to lose, it's going to be about, I think he's going to win because I think they want him around as long as possible. But again, it's only 4 years and maybe not even that. He'll be a lame duck at the end. Who the hell knows? Like we might not have an American 4 years. So, you know, that is whatever it is. But if they get rid of him, then it's not going to be a clean, you know, him just going off into the sunset and everybody stops talking about him. because all they have is him.
Is we have a nation in decline, and they have put it into decline. We have a nation that is dying, David.
Mr. President, thank you. Vice President Harris, you heard the president there tonight. He said he didn't say that he lost by a whisker. So he still believes he did not lose the election that was won by President Biden and yourself. But I do want to ask you about something that's come up in the last couple of days. This was a post from President Trump about this upcoming election just weeks away. He said, when I win, those people who cheated, and then he lists donors, voters, election officials, he says will be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law.
So these are all things that are negative for Trump, right? Like, why not ask her about something that she has done wrong or Biden has done wrong, things that she's a part of, all these things. They asked her a little bit about the economy, very mild way. They gave her a long segment on abortion, right? They minimized immigration, and they didn't slam her on that. They said that she was, she was put in charge a little bit, but mostly it's just handing her, things on a tee, and she already has prepared statements for all these lobbed questions, right? This is how Hillary Clinton beat Bernie Sanders, where Hillary Clinton bailed out the DNC, and she said, well, if I'm bailing you out, DNC was left $12 million in debt by Obama. And so Hillary Clinton bailed him out, but she said, well, I want to win the nomination. So they allowed her to pick the questions that were being asked at these debates and things. And so, that was, completely effed up, right? And that's what's happening here. And, anybody can see this. Anybody in the media knows what's going on here because they're a part of it. They're all rigging this, again, to get rid of Trump. And what are they going to do without him? What the fuck are they going to do when they don't have Trump? They have nothing else. They have nothing of interest to people. The words, the stuff that's inside of them, the things that they would express, nobody wants to listen to. Right? Everything is they're centered around hating Trump.
Which will include long-term prison sentences. One of your campaign's top lawyers responded saying, we won't let Donald Trump intimidate us. We won't let him suppress the vote. Is that what you believe he's trying to do here?
Donald Trump was fired by 81 million people. So let's be clear about that. And clearly he is having a very difficult time.
That's a line that they put out there, right? It's like you saw his reaction. They're looking for lines that they thought would trigger Trump. And then all the other talking points that none of this stuff is coming from her. She's just a mannequin up there and bad at it. She's not good at reading these lines.
I'm processing that. But we cannot afford to have a president of the United States who attempts, as he did in the past, to upend the will of the voters in a free and fair election. And I'm going to tell you that I have traveled the world as Vice President of the United States, and world leaders are laughing at Donald Trump.
Okay, name them. Okay, these are things that he says. These are his lines. He says that world leaders are laughing at Kamala Harris and Joe Biden. These are things he says in his speech. And the other thing is, when Trump says it, he gets hammered for it. And when she says it, it's like she's kicking ass, right? It's like when Marjorie Taylor Greene is like some ignorant redneck, bozo up there, and she's just spouting goofy QB narratives. They make fun of her. But when that other woman called her, bleach blonde, butch body, whatever it was thing that she called her, they celebrated her, right? They get to do name calling. They get to say things like this. But this is things Trump said. He said the world leaders are laughing at Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, and she's just taking what he said and putting it on him, and somehow it's brilliant when she says it, right?
I have talked with military leaders, some of whom worked with you, and they say you're a disgrace. And when you then...
The military is clearly behind, other than the generals and these paid shills. Military people love Trump, and they love the Republican Party. We know that, right?
Talk in this way in a presidential debate and deny what over and over again are court cases you have lost because you did, in fact, lose that election. It leads one to believe that perhaps we do not have in the candidate to my right the temperament or the ability to not be confused.
Okay, this is where she's shitting on him like he's senile. After propping up this senile fuck who has Parkinson. There's a video I put out, if you guys haven't seen it. I don't know when, it's from some weeks ago. when Joe Biden was falling apart. And the CNN had a guy, this was back when CNN was finally admitting that Joe Biden had dementia. And this guy was an expert in Parkinson's, and he just diagnosed Joe Biden. They showed video of all of his, the way he walks, the gait in which he walks, the way he turns his body. And he had these medical terms about, Parkinson's terms that only an expert would, know these things. But it's something we all said, and he would explain what Parkinson's does to the human system that makes a person have to, like how Joe Biden doesn't turn his head. He has to pivot his whole body. And he explained the gait, the way he walked. And he said that an intern, a medical intern should be able to diagnose Joe Biden based on all these symptoms. Like, it's so far gone, Parkinson's. And the guy said, well, is this hard to diagnose? And he said, no, a medical intern could do this, right? And we all saw it. Like, we didn't know it was Parkinson's, but if you had a relative who had Parkinson's, you would know. You would see the same things, right? If you had a relative who has dementia. And this guy explained the difference between Alzheimer's and Parkinson's and why this is Parkinson's. And she knew, and the Democrats knew, that Joe Biden was, we all knew, like, we saw it. Like, he couldn't get up his flight of stairs. He couldn't lift his feet. Like, he couldn't articulate things. He was confused all the time. He looked like a deer in headlights. And that was all the way back in 2019. It just got progressively worse. And now she's claiming Trump is senile when he clearly isn't nearly as bad as Joe Biden, right? Like, that's how hypocritical this thing is. And nobody's going to call her on. Now, he's going to bring up Joe Biden, and then she's going to say this thing. I'm going to end this there because this is the big moment. Well, let's just watch this.
About fact. That's deeply troubling, and the American people deserve better.
I'll give you 1 minute to respond, Mr. President.
Let me just say about world leaders. Viktor Orban, one of the most respected men, they call him a strong man. He's a tough person, smart. Prime Minister of Hungary. They said, why is the whole world blowing up? 3 years ago, it wasn't. Why is it blowing up? He said, because you need Trump back as president. They were afraid of him. China was afraid, and I don't like to use the word afraid, but I'm just quoting him. China was afraid of him. North Korea was afraid of him. Look at what's going on with North Korea, by the way. He said Russia was afraid of him. I ended the Nord Stream 2 pipeline, and Biden put it back on day one, but he ended the XL pipeline. The XL pipeline in our country, he ended that. But he let the Russians build a pipeline going all over Europe and heading into Germany, the biggest pipeline in the world. Look, Viktor Orban said it. He said the most respected, most feared person is Donald Trump. We had no problems when Trump was president, but when this weak, pathetic man that you saw at a debate just a few months ago, that if he weren't in that debate, he'd be running instead of her. She got no votes. He got 14 million votes. What you did, you talk about a threat to democracy. He got
Again, they should talk about that. Like, she bypassed the democratic process. But here's the big moment coming up, right? And he has a failure here.
14 million votes, and they threw him out of office. And you know what? I'll give you a little secret. He hates her. He can't stand her. But he got 14 million votes. They threw him out. She got 0 votes. And when she ran, she was the first one to leave because she failed. And now she's running.
Well, this is stuff I've said forever, and they're finally, I don't know, I don't think they're getting it from me, but they're finally getting there, right? Like, going back to that she was, she's never been an electable person, but they're just manufacturing her electability through all this false stuff and, pretending. And again, I don't know how the American people are really seeing this, but they're so docile and sheep-like, they might go along with it. Trump's so hateable and he's so played out, but here's a big part here.
I don't understand it, but
Mr.
I'm
President,
okay with it because
your time is
I think
up.
we're
Thank
going to
you.
do very well.
We've got a lot more to get to.
Turning now to the Israel-Hamas war and the hostages who are still being held, Americans among them. Vice President Harris, in December, you said, quote, Israel has a right to defend itself, but you added, quote, it matters how, saying international humanitarian law must be respected. Israel must do more to protect innocent civilians. You said that 9 months ago. Now an estimated 40,000 Palestinians are dead. Nearly 100 hostages remain. Just last week, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said there's not a deal in the making. President Biden has not been able to break through the stalemate. How would you do it?
Well, let's understand how we got here.
Okay, she says this all the time. Like she explains this like to people who are in kindergarten. Okay, how did we get here, Kamala? Say something profound and new that we didn't know.
On October 7th,
Okay, that's going to be that bullshit.
Hamas, a terrorist organization, slaughtered 1,200 Israelis.
Boom. Hamas.
Many of them young people who were simply attending a concert.
They were just attending a concert, and they were just out there attending a concert, and these guys came in and slaughtered them. If you guys didn't know, it's on October 6th of last year, if you're not aware.
Women were horribly raped.
Horribly hard. Horribly. Like, not nicely. They didn't do it nice at all. They were horrible about it.
So absolutely, I said then, I say now, Israel has a right to defend itself. We would.
Yeah, exactly. They were attacked by this group, and so they attacked an unarmed group of people that had nothing to do with it and killed 20,000 children. It's completely acceptable.
And how it does so matters.
This is how she said it again. That's something that she said 6 months ago. These are all her taglines, right?
As it is also true, far too many innocent Palestinians have been killed. Children, mothers. What we know is that this war must end. It must end immediately, and the way it will end is we need a ceasefire deal and we need the hostages out.
Okay, so how are you going to do that? Like, that's what everyone's saying needs to be done. Israel's never going to agree to a ceasefire because they want this war to continue because they started this war. They wanted this war, and they want this land. And this is their last chance to get it, right? I mean, if Trump is president, they'll get whatever they want. And so they can hold out for that. But either way, they're not signing shit, right? And they're not going to respect her she's going to be like a lame duck president on day one because she's just going to be a continuation of Biden's failed policies. Once they don't have Trump to kick around, she can't blame Trump for all of her problems. She could blame Biden. And then, she might do that, but she was a part of that because she was his vice president. So it's really squirrely. Like, she's going to have nobody to blame, right? Like, they can't say, all right, the things that happened 3 years ago are screwing me over now. I mean, she can try that, and they might buy it for a little bit. But when Trump's gone, they're going to have to do real news. And the real news is going to be bad for her when things are going south quickly, which they will.
And so we will continue to work around the clock on that.
They're going to work around the clock. They're not going to sleep at all until they get a ceasefire because that's how it works. If you stay up consecutively and don't get any sleep and you work on it for 24 hours a day, eventually the work gets done because sleep-deprived people who have no control over the Israeli people and their false flag agents, Hamas, they're going to get this thing done.
Clock, also understanding that we must chart a course for a two-state solution.
Yeah, that's never going to happen. Israel's never going to allow that to happen. So why are you even talking? This was talked about, even before Jimmy Carter. I don't know how long they've been talking about two-state solution, but it's like, and we're talking years and years ago. Past before Reagan, I don't even know what, right? The 70s, the 60s, I don't even know how long it's been going on, right?
And in that solution, there must be security for the Israeli people and Israel and in equal measure for the Palestinians. But the one thing I will assure you always, I will always give Israel the ability to defend itself, in particular as it relates to Iran and any threat that Iran and its proxies pose to Israel. But we must have a two-state solution where we can rebuild Gaza.
So these are artificial answers, and they're all bullshit answers. All of his answers are bullshit. But hers are his bullshit. Hers is Democratic handlers bullshit and Joe Biden's bullshit that she's just regurgitating. It's like a bird who's fed with, the mom throws up something in the bird's mouth and the bird eats it and then they digest it and then they spit it back out, in terms of this rhetoric, right? It's just, it's nothing to do with what she believes or what she is as a person because there's nothing there. The fact that they have to run her as this kind of a person, like with no real personality, no autonomy, is because she doesn't have anything inside of her. At least the stuff inside of her isn't electable, right? So they have to create this artificial person and bolster it with all this fake enthusiasm and taglines, and they have to steal Republican, freedom-loving stuff and USA. They're stealing all the Republican stuff because that's where the enthusiasm is. And it doesn't work for the Democrats like they did at the convention. It's just kind of a joke, right?
Palestinians have security, self-determination, and the dignity they so rightly deserve.
President Trump, how would you negotiate with Netanyahu and also Hamas in order to get the hostages out and prevent the killing of more innocent civilians in Gaza?
If I were president, it would have never started. If I were president, Russia would have never, ever, I know Putin very well, he would have never, and there was no threat of it either, by the way, for 4 years, have gone into Ukraine and killed millions of people when you add it up, far worse than people understand what's going on over there. But when she mentions about Israel, all of a sudden, she hates Israel. She wouldn't even meet with Netanyahu when he went to Congress to make a very important speech. She refused to be there because she was at a sorority party of hers. She wanted to go to the sorority party.
Now, these are like good jabs. They're not giving credit to Trump for these things, and they're truthful things, right? And, you know, I mean, Trump sucks on Israel. He's worse. She's better on Israel than he is. The Democrats at least are a little resistant to the, you know, because they have the young people in the Democratic Party who, you know, are against the, you know, genocide of the Palestinian people. So they have to, you know, pander to them a little bit, like a tiny bit, right?
Party. She hates Israel. If she's president, I believe that Israel will not exist within 2 years from now. And I've been pretty good at predictions, and I hope I'm wrong about that one. She hates Israel.
Well, that's going to send a lot of your supporters over to Kamala. That's going to send a lot of truthers over to Kamala, if that's the case, right? That's like a lot of people that support you actually like hearing that.
At the same time, in her own way, she hates the Arab population because the whole place is going to get blown up. Arabs, Jewish people, Israel will be gone. It would have never happened. Iran was broke under Donald Trump. Now Iran has $300 billion because they took off all the sanctions that I had. Iran had no money for Hamas or Hezbollah or any of the 28 different spheres of terror. And they are spheres of terror. Horrible.
Spheres of terror. Like, this is where he's just being a complete piece of shit. I mean, this is like, he's much worse than, I mean, he's not worse than Kennedy, but worse than she is.
Terror. They had no money. It was a big story, and you know it. You covered it very well, actually. They had no money.
Did they?
For terror. They were broke. Now they're a rich nation, and now what they're doing is they're spreading that money around. Look at what's happening with the Houthis and Yemen. Look
the
at
Houthis. The Houthis and the blowfish.
What's going on in the Middle East. This would have never happened. I will get that settled and fast, and I'll get the war with Ukraine and Russia ended. If I'm president-elect, I'll get it done before even becoming president.
Vice President Harris, he says you hate Israel.
That's absolutely not true. I have...
Because she married a guy named Dougie Fresh, who's really into being Jewish. And she has 2 Jewish kids now, stepkids. And, you know, like, there's no indication she hates Israel. Like, he just makes shit up, right?
Trump is weak and wrong on national security and foreign policy. It is well known that he admires dictators.
It's well known. Like, it's just a cadence. And these are all things that she said at the, you know, these are just talking points she repeats over and over again. The scripted lines, and she's so bad at delivering them. Look at his face. Look at...
Wants to be a dictator on day one, according to himself. It is well known.
Again, that's just exaggerated, right?
That he said of Putin that he can do whatever the hell he wants and go into Ukraine. It is well known that he said when Russia went into Ukraine, it was brilliant. It is well known he exchanged love letters with Kim Jong-un.
So these are, look at.
And it is absolutely well known that these dictators and autocrats are rooting for you to be president again because they're so clear. They can manipulate you with flattery and favors. And that is why so many military leaders who you have worked with have told me you are a disgrace.
Who are they? Who are they? Like, name their names.
Disgrace.
He's a disgrace.
That is why We understand that we have to have a president who is not consistently weak and wrong on
Vice
national
President
security,
Harris.
including the importance of upholding and respecting in highest regard our military.
Vice President
The military is overwhelmingly for Trump. We know that, right?
Harris, thank you.
They're the ones, and she's the one that caused it, that's weak on national security by allowing every nation last month for the year, 168 different countries sending people into our country. Their crime rates are way down. Putin endorsed her last week, said, I hope she wins. And I think he meant it, because what he's gotten away with is absolutely incredible. It wouldn't have happened with me. The leaders of other countries think that they're weak and incompetent, and they are. They're grossly incompetent. And I just ask one question. Why does Biden go in and kill the Keystone Pipeline and approve the single biggest deal that Russia's ever made, Nord Stream 2, the biggest pipeline anywhere in the world going to Germany and all over Europe? Because they're weak and they're ineffective. And Biden, by the way,
President
gets paid
Trump,
a lot of money.
Thank you. We have a lot of issues to get to.
We'll be right back with much more of this historic ABC News presidential debate from the National...
Okay, this is the big stuff's coming right up, I think, here. Okay, so that last segment I just started to render it is 42 minutes, so I really want to wrap this up. Two big things coming here where she says that Putin will eat his lunch, and then she says, you're not running against me, not Joe Biden, which we know, well, let's get into it here.
Historic ABC News presidential debate tonight. We're going to continue here, and I want to turn to the war in Ukraine. We're now 2.5 years into this conflict. Mr. President, it has been the position of the Biden administration that we must defend Ukraine from Russia, from Vladimir Putin, to defend their sovereignty, their democracy, that it's in America's best interest to do so, arguing that if Putin wins, he may be emboldened to move even further into other countries. You have said you would solve this war in 24 hours. You said so just before the break tonight. How exactly would you do that? And I want to ask you a very simple question tonight. Do you want Ukraine to win this war?
I want the war to stop. I want to save lives that are being uselessly, people being killed by the millions. It's the millions. It's so much worse than the numbers that you're getting, which are fake numbers. Look, we're in for 250 billion or more, because they don't ask Europe, which is a much bigger beneficiary to getting this thing done than we are. They're in for $150 billion less because Biden and you don't have the courage to ask Europe like I did with NATO. They paid billions and billions, hundreds of billions of dollars when I said, either you pay up or we're not going to protect you anymore. So that's maybe one of the reasons they don't like me as much as they like weak people. But
there's the laugh.
You take a look at what's happening. We're in for 250 to 270.
Watch her, like, she doesn't know how to, like, fade out of her smile.
75 billion. They're into 100 to 150. They should be forced to equalize. With that being said, I want to get the war settled. I know Zelensky very well, and I know Putin very well. I have a good relationship, and they respect your president, okay? They respect me. They don't respect Biden. How would you respect him? Why? For what reason? He hasn't even made a phone call in 2 years to Putin, hasn't spoken to anybody. They don't even try and get it. That is a war that's dying to be settled. I will get it settled before I even become president. If I win, when I'm president-elect, and what I'll do is I'll speak to one, I'll speak to the other, I'll get them together. That war would have never happened. And in fact, when I saw Putin after I left, unfortunately left because our country has gone to hell. But after I left, when I saw him building up soldiers, he did it after I left, I said, oh, he must be negotiating. It must be a good, strong point of negotiation. Well, it wasn't, because Biden had no idea how to talk to him. He had no idea how to stop it. And now you have millions of people dead, and it's only getting worse, and it could lead to World War III. Don't kid yourself, David.
Don't kid yourself, David. It's going to happen any day now.
We're playing with World War III, and we have a president that we don't even know if he's... Where is our president? We don't even know if he's a president.
And just to clarify
they
here...
threw him out of a campaign like a dog. We don't even know.
Like a dog. And if he goes to Springfield, Ohio, he'll be eaten. Like a dog.
Is he our president? But we have a president,
Mr. President,
that doesn't know he's alive.
Your time is up. Just to clarify in the question, do you believe it's in the U.S. best interests for Ukraine to win this war, yes or no?
I think it's the U.S. best interest to get this war finished and just get it done.
He's making it sound like you're unpatriotic to not to want Ukraine to lose the war. They already lost the war. They've lost so many young people. I mean, their population is decimated, and America has spent so much money, and they've already lost. Like, it should be called. It's like one of those things where the Ukrainians don't want to admit, and certainly the Biden administration doesn't want to admit that it was a waste of money. And the Russians won. The Russians killed them, right? And the Russians have come out of this thing stronger. You know, the neocons baited Biden into believing that they could break Russia by doing this war. And they completely miscalculated. Like, they fucked up the whole Iraqi war and all this stuff. The neocons were responsible for the big event in 2001, like all those things. And they pushed for what happened in the Arab Spring. That was their Arab Spring. They wanted to invade 7 countries in 5 years, and they wrecked the whole Middle East. Libya's a mess. They destroyed that country. Iraq, Afghanistan, and the Taliban are emboldened back in power. That's all their bullshit, right? And everyone thought they were done, like they would never get power again because they're epic failure. And Biden, because he wanted to beat Trump and he needed Republican allies, made a deal with them to let them run his foreign policy if they help cheat Trump and get him out of the office, right? And so, like, this is, anyways.
All right.
Negotiate a deal, because we have to stop all of these human lives from being destroyed.
I want to take this to Vice President Harris. I want to get your thoughts on support for Ukraine in this moment, but also, as Commander-in-Chief, if elected, how would you deal with Vladimir Putin, and would it be any different from what we're seeing from President Biden?
Well, first of all, it's important to remind the former president you're not running against Joe Biden, you're running against me.
Okay, so that's a set line. Dana Bash even said it, right? Dana Bash was, you know, in that post-debate analysis, I have, hopefully I still have the clip. Let me stop this video here, and I'll see if I have the clip there.
I'm just looking up, this is the quote that I think really sums up what Kamala Harris, her whole message was tonight. You're not running against Joe Biden, you're running against me. It was obviously a planned line.
But even Dana Bash admits that that's just a set line, right? They're all like, you know, they all know. And these are just lines that she was given. And, you know, she was supposed to put these statements out at the appropriate time, but Trump didn't cooperate enough to where she could do that, right? But she won't denounce Biden's policies. And she's talking about all of Biden's successes, like I said earlier. She's in this awkward position where she can't dismiss or, you know, admit that Joe Biden was senile and that she is going to be a better candidate and these things. She's got to talk about how great Joe Biden is. But she knew, and everyone else knew, that he was senile in 2019. And so she can't admit that Joe Biden wasn't running his own policies, and the people that were running his policies are the same people that are behind her, because if they had to have a primary, she wouldn't be able to win the primary, or it would be just a big mess. And she would have to have her own team then, right? I mean, she could have used the Biden team. And so the other politicians that might have run for president for, you know, the nomination for the Democrats would have had to come up with their own team. They would have had to put together a team, you know, with 6 months left or whatever it was, 3 months left when Biden withdrew. That's why they waited so long. They could have done this in January, and she would have run on the Biden she would have been running on the Biden platform, and nobody would have elected her because people are pissed at Biden because of inflation. And so it's just, all this stuff should be called out by the media. It's just what you should do. Like, they're allowing this deception that's so obvious to most people who have like any kind of a pulse and critical thinking skills to see, right? But she's saying he's not running against Biden, but everything that she has is Biden's, right? And so just because she says those words doesn't mean she won the debate. Like, she said those words that they told her to say, but they're not appropriate. They're not honest. They're not, you know, they hold no weight, right?
I believe the reason that Donald Trump says that this war would be over within 24 hours is because he would just give it up. And that's not who we are as Americans. Let's understand.
What do you mean? It's not our war. And you guys screwed the Ukrainian people. You know, giving it up like you did in Afghanistan, like, you know, with the way you failed in Afghanistan, which should have been given up by Bush years ago. Like, you just spent more money in human lives that were lost, and, you know, all the people you betrayed, all the people in Afghanistan that helped the Americans were slaughtered by the Taliban, just all these things, right? It's horrible. Droning kids. What about when Joe Biden droned 8 kids? Like, why isn't that a thing, right?
Understand what happened here. I actually met with Zelensky a few days before Russia invaded, tried through force to change territorial boundaries, to defy one of the most important international rules and norms, which is the importance of sovereignty and territorial integrity. And I met with President Zelensky. I shared with him American intelligence about how he could defend himself. Days later, I went to NATO's eastern flank, to Poland and Romania. And through the work that I and others did, we brought 50 countries together to
they didn't contribute dick.
support Ukraine in its righteous defense. And because of our support, because of the air defense, the ammunition, the artillery, the javelins, the Abrams tanks that we have provided, Ukraine stands as an independent and free country. If Donald Trump were president, Putin would be sitting in Kyiv right now. And understand what that would mean.
Okay, so let me tell you what really happened. So when the neocons that Obama actually continued some of their policies, which was bizarre. Obama, who won 2 Nobel Peace Prizes, continued on with the neocons' wrecked policies. Remember, this guy Wesley Clark, who was a Democrat, he went into the Pentagon, and he used to be head of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. And he was talking to some of the guys that used to work for him, and he said to the guy, what's going on here? He went right after the big event in 2001. And the guy said, it's really bad here. It's crazy. And first he came once and he said they're going to invade like Iraq. And he's like, why are they going to do that? And then he came back like a couple weeks later and said it's even worse now. They're going to invade 7 countries in 5 years. I've showed you the clip before. So Wesley Clark said that. And he was talking about the neocons, right, who are now who are running Biden's defense policies because Biden make a deal with them, right? And, with Biden and Obama, when they were trying to go into Syria, remember they're trying to do regime change in Syria, the Russians war blocked them, and they said that they were going to shoot down Russian planes. Russia was bombing ISIS, and ISIS was an American asset. ISIS was the old Revolutionary Guard in Iraq, these special high-level soldiers that they, gave an oil field to become this, false flaggy type of opposition, controlled opposition, right? And so when all that happened, they started talking about Russia. Then they said Russia rigged the election, and so they had a hard-on for Russia, right? Because they war blocked them in Syria. And so as soon as Trump was president, there was no thought of Russia invading the Ukraine because Trump wasn't big on NATO. Trump didn't want to defend Europe anymore. He was just down on NATO. That's why he was saying he wanted to make them pay for their, you're basically paying America to be your security guard or your army, right? I mean, that was part of the deal to make America the world reserve currency, that America, with this, large population of very aggressive, like American men are trained to be very aggressive and to love war, and the military is so important that the military would go defend Europe and they wouldn't have to keep standing military. Some of those countries have only 10 million people. America has 300 million people and immigrants and people who are willing to join the military, right? And so, Trump didn't like NATO, and these guys got in, and Biden, still with this Russia thing, and having these neocons who wanted to, take Russia down through this Ukrainian war, said that they were going to allow the Ukraine to join NATO. That's why Putin did all this, and she's a part of that. So that's a big lie, right? Because they provoked Putin, because he said, "Well, I'm going to invade Ukraine now if you guys are going to make Ukraine a part of NATO." Because as soon as Ukraine becomes part of NATO, the Ukraine could bully Russia. It's like having the missiles, like the Cuban Missile Crisis that Kennedy had to deal with, missiles on your doorstep, right? And they'd put in, American missiles in the Ukraine, NATO missiles, and that would be, extraordinarily bad for Russia. He had no choice. They forced his hand, and they thought it was going to go their way, and it didn't, right? So that's the whole thing. That's the truth here, right? They provoked Putin on purpose, and we're the bad guys in this situation. And the Ukrainians have suffered, and the Russians have suffered because of it. And we've suffered financially.
Because Putin's agenda is not just about Ukraine. Understand why the European allies and our NATO allies are so thankful that you are no longer president, and that we understand the importance of the greatest military alliance the world has ever known, which is NATO.
Okay, that means America's got to fight for these countries that have very limited militaries, right?
And what we have done to preserve the ability of Zelensky and the Ukrainians to fight for their independence. Otherwise, Putin would be sitting in Kyiv with his eyes on the rest of Europe, starting with Poland. And why don't you tell the 800,000...
Okay, so all Poland and these other countries are part of NATO. And so if he attacked Poland, we would have to go into war. It would be no choice whether Trump was there or Trump was the president or not, right? So they weren't going to go into the Ukraine if Trump was president because all these things I said, but they certainly aren't going to go into Poland. Plus, Putin has been sort of the voice for peace. Remember when the Israelis bombed Iran, and Russia and Iran have an alliance. Putin said, "Let me deal with this," and prevented the Iranians from striking back at Israel because it would provoke World War III. So Putin has actually done some things to prevent these warmongering motherfuckers, right? And these neocons who are just they're like freaking crazy. They're completely freaking crazy and wrong all the time. And this is the disaster waiting to happen, right?
Polish Americans right here in Pennsylvania, how quickly you would give up for the sake of favor and what you think is a friendship with what is known to be a dictator who would eat you for lunch.
So again, what he should say here, this was the big moment. And Trump didn't say it. It's stupid. If he was going to eat me for lunch, then why did he wait till I was gone to invade the Ukraine, right? Because, he invaded the Ukraine when you guys were there. So he wasn't intimidated by you guys because he knew you guys didn't like it. But he did. Why did he do it, right? He didn't do it under Trump's watch. But Trump, he's just not as sharp as he used to be. And he's, got his petty little things that he thinks about, but there's other things. He missed a lot of opportunities in this debate, but it doesn't matter because American people are too stupid to understand what he's talking about, right?
Vice President Harris, thank you. We've heard from both of you on Ukraine tonight.
Okay, so that's where I want to stop here. Okay, so there's various ways to decide who wins something, like in something like this, a debate, right? And let's say you take a debate class or you join a debate club. It's completely different than something like that, right? The debates that now exist are measured on various levels, but mostly the dumbed down people they're supposed to appeal to, right? Like the smart people might be able to see through this, that, or the other thing, but this isn't for them. So your professors and, people who would judge a debate contest, they're not. I mean, this is way below what they're capable of in terms of their intellectual abilities. And the standards of debating that you would have even at a high school level are much lower at this presidential level. So, but there's different ways to judge victory. Like I would say spiritually, which I'll talk about first. I talked about potential voters that would swing the election one way or another. And then in terms of internet, what the internet thinks, right? In terms of memes and that kind of thing. Now, spiritually, it's about betraying yourself, right? How your performance, this is for everything. How you conduct yourself on a daily basis is going to help or hurt you spiritually, your soul's evolution. Are you going to encumber it with a lot of, lies and, bad decisions and things, your egotistical behavior that creates more bondage and sets you backwards on your spiritual path, right? There was a time years ago, there was an ashram we had in Molina, Georgia, and I just watched a video in 1996 when I was 32 or 3 years old, and I was there and I didn't recognize myself at first. I had this kind of reaction to it, and I covered it in the Journey series and on some of my backup channels. Like I just had this weird reaction to seeing myself in a way that I usually don't, right? Because when I see myself on video, I don't recognize myself because it's not how I perceive myself to be, right? It's, whatever. But there was a time there, that's not the point of the story, though. There was a time where one of the my friends was doing security for the master of the system, like volunteer. And it's just keeping people, preventing people from going and like sitting on his lap and, bothering him and things like this, right? And I, pulled a few shifts, and sometimes I was sitting there. They had this little courtyard area. They had a building where there's a cafeteria, and there was a place where people meditated when there wasn't a big gathering. There was, a room that would seat about 100 people or so, 75 people maybe. And next to that is where Master Chargy, the master, would sleep. It was an area where he would be available to people, but also be able to have some, private time away from people. And we were supposed to sit by the door and make sure people just didn't bum rush it, which they would. It was crazy. It was kind of almost embarrassing the way people would, push their way in and things like this. But there was times he would come out. There was a little rail there, like sort of a little, porch area. And he'd come out and he'd talk to people. And, kids don't have a lot to do there. And, kids don't get like a lot of times kids would be bummed because there wasn't anything for them to do. There was other kids to play with, but, they eventually built a playground and things. So that was, better, right? But there was, issues with the kids going to the gathering. And, most of that ended up not starting because of that, right? Because they would rather be with their friends, or, they were leaving things to go on vacation that wasn't so fun for them. Chargy, tried to interact with the kids, and sometimes like he'd hand out candy from the balcony. And there was this young woman who looked like she was a kid, but she was in her 20s, and he had bad eyesight. Like as he got older, he went blind in one eye completely, and the other eye he could barely see out of. And so he was handing out these chocolates, and this woman took one, and Chargy couldn't really see it. He said, "Just for kids." All these other people were, trying to get some. Like just kind of. It's kind of gross on their part. And he saw this woman, and he realized she was like 20 in her 20s. And one of my friends, the guy who was in charge of security, was standing right next to him. And Chargy said, under his breath, "You betray yourself for a piece of candy," right? And it's kind of a profound thing. Like people will do all kinds of deception and will perpetrate all kinds of, fraudulent behavior for nothing, like some things that don't even work out, things that end up hurting them instead of helping them, right? And so how you conduct yourself, that you don't betray your soul. When you lie, yeah, it hurts other people and you're deceiving other people, but it hurts you worse, right? And when you carry out a fraud and deception, it hurts you worse. Now, Trump is who he kind of is. Like he's old and he's not going to change, and his life is lived whatever way it's was lived. I mean, you could say he has a little credit because he was somebody that did something different. He was a clear outsider. And I don't think he was ever a really good president. You definitely need some experience. And being a businessman isn't, going to cut it. Like you need political experience. And I think that hurt him. But he did something different. He was a different kind of a person in terms of being a politician. And some of those things were good. But either way, people want a real outsider. And Kamala Harris is trying to define herself as a new generation. She wants to turn the page on Trump and Biden. But she has the same handlers, the same old, Biden, these old gatekeepers, the Clinton people, the Obama people, the power brokers in the Democratic Party, and all these fucking pundits and news people that all read from the same script. And they've failed time and time again. And they've pushed these failed policies. And now they're getting... Because of Trump, they've been able to push through more of this like Hollywood morality, this, this liberal agenda, all this sexuality stuff they're pushing through. And it's, so gross and so demonic, right? They're just pushing it through. And Kamala Harris doesn't have anything. She's not a person of substance. She's not a person who's that she's quotable. Like she couldn't, if she was just a normal person, she couldn't field an audience on the internet. No one wants to listen to her. She's not, the cackle. I mean, she's just not likable. And, she's gotten her positions by devious means, prostituting herself, dating a guy that's 60 when she's 29, and then all the other things she's done to move up in the ladder, right? And so going into this debate, she only really had one option, and that was just to put on a fabricated performance, pretend to be somebody she's not. And they constructed this persona, weeks ago. I mean, they've been probably be doing this for the past 6 months, training her for when they were going to stab Biden in the back and replace him with her because, she's their puppet. She's their established puppet, right? And so there's no dignity. There's no spiritual benefit for that. She's betrayed herself for a presidency. If she wins, it means nothing, right? And all these pundits, if you watch something that's supposed to be a competition, and no matter what happens, you're going to say something, like you're going to say the exact same thing, that the performance itself, there's nothing there that you're going to react to. There's nothing there that's going to change what you're about to say, because she's going to get those taglines in, and no matter how poorly she delivers them. I mean, it was a loss for her from the very standpoint that they built their whole debate strategy around Donald Trump getting triggered and overreacting, which he did his best job. I mean, you could say it's a win for Trump, because Trump finally listened to his people and said, don't talk when it's not your turn, which he did throughout the debate. He didn't talk, and he didn't get all that triggered. And there's things he had to answer, things he had to say that they baited him into, saying, and, he could have maybe done a little bit better job, but it was by far his best performance. So, the goals of his people were, do what he did, and he did a good job at that, right? Where the goals for her people were for her to, make some separation between, well, first she was supposed to, trigger and bait Trump into all this stuff, which didn't happen. So right there, there's a loss. That's, that should be some, because by their own standards, they thought Trump was going to react in a way he didn't, right? Just like when Trump debated Biden and he set up this idea that Biden was going to break down mentally, but they gave him some sort of drug and he was particularly lucid, back in 2020. And Biden won the debate by everybody's standards, because he didn't shit himself, right? Like, they had such low standards for him that he won just by, not being as bad as he normally was and being more lucid than people thought he could be. And Trump screwed himself by, him and his people saying that Biden was going to fall apart, and he didn't, right? So all Biden had to do was be able to complete sentences, and he did an okay job at that, better than normal. And so people thought he won, right? So that's, what Trump did here. And she didn't define herself as being different from Joe Biden. And of course she was, she got so much help from these people. And so you really can't call this a win on any level in terms of their own expectations, right? Their own goals. But ultimately it's the swing state voters who will decide, and nobody knows how that's going to work out unless there's some polling done. But we don't know how those people really feel about it. And, there might be some long-term effects from getting a big dose of Kamala that won't register right now, but in a couple of weeks they'll be like, oh, I hate this bitch, right? But resting bitch face, these women, I mean, Hillary Clinton was another one. They don't know how to win over men. And if winning over men is what Kamala Harris has to do, she can't do it. Like, she is the opposite of something that, men find appealing, right? I mean, there are women who know how to work men. There are women who know, and it's not just sexual. It's like they just know how to get men to do things. They can act a certain way. They know how to manipulate men. They know how to win men over. I mean, there's women who are really good at it, and every man's experienced women who are good at it, maybe in a deceptive way, that are able to just go and get you to eat out of their hand. And Hillary Clinton is like the last person. She just can't do that. And Kamala Harris is following, these feminist women. They don't know how to appeal to men, right? They just want to feminist-splain everything to men and expect them to bow down to them and, admit they're wrong. I mean, many of them hate men, right? And so Kamala Harris is, her laugh is so off-putting, her expressions, her mannerisms. She's the kind of woman that men get like, oh my God, like I got to get away from her, right? She's just like one of these walking nightmares. And so if that's success, if they're expecting for her to win over, redneck men, I mean, the woman said black men and, men who are like blue-collar workers in Pennsylvania, then she did not win this debate, right? I mean, some of this we won't see till the end of it. But in terms of honesty, in terms of performance, Trump was his deceptive self and he sucked, but at least he's being authentic, right? And again, he was restrained. He did a better job, where she is just off-putting and, she didn't do a good job of delivering the lines that she was given. But if you have a preconceived idea and you say, okay, whatever she does, we're going to say she wins, and we'll all just pretend she wins, yeah, you can do that. But that in itself pisses people off, right? And so, I don't know how much of this election is going to be decided by any real voting. and how much there's even, they've already chose somebody that's already predetermined. And so, either way, we'll see what goes. I don't know, how quickly we're going to descend under Trump as opposed to Harris. I know what a Trump presidency is going to look like. I kind of know what a Kamala Harris presidency is going to look like. But I know one thing, I'm not going to be watching Kamala Harris in politics unless something big happens, because fucking she's unwatchable. Like, she is fucking repulsive, right? She is just, so, like, she's just the opposite of likable, right? I mean, she's just the opposite of every good thing you could say about a person socially. And so, that's pretty clear now. And hopefully there won't be a second debate, because I don't want to sit through it. But, again, if they're just going to say she wins and, all these things, is what, why do that? If it's going to be rigged the way it is, I don't know why Trump would sit through another debate, because he doesn't really have a chance to win over these pundits and other people. And really, they're just pandering to 10 different states and the undecided voters there. And, like, no one knows what the fuck is going on in those people's minds. Anyways, only spirituality will save this world. It's Paul Romano, definitely pointing for the apocalypse and the ascension. Everyone have a blessed day and be grateful.